Welcome everyone to the June 9th Loma Linda City Council meeting. And we will get started. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilman Jindal?
Present.
Councilman Leonard?
Here.
Councilman Rigsby? Here. Mayor Pro Tempore Daly?
Here.
Mayor Duper?
Present.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Phil, can you leave your mic on? Because where I'm at, I can half hear you in both places.
Leave it on or leave it off?
On.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I don't have this in.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Typet, are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
At this point, we will open up for public comment. Any member of the public who wishes to speak on any non-agenda item will have an opportunity to do so. This period is limited to 30 minutes with 3 minutes for each speaker. IT folks, do we have anybody waiting?
Phil, invocation.
If you wish to speak at this time, please tell us in text chat or use the, there's also an expression menu. You can raise your hand through there.
And while we're queuing that up, let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Councilmember Jindal.
Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, with liberty and justice for.
God, for the past few weeks, it has been time of trial. We have had many ill fortunes befall our people in a short period of time. We pray that we have the perseverance and fortitude to get through these times with compassion. We pray for our fellow neighbors who may be going through hurt. We pray that we are able to help those that may feel lost. And we pray for a brighter future for our citizens and for the graduating seniors of the Loma Linda Academy and many other high schools, so that they may see a brighter future than the one they have stepped into. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any takers for oral participation? Seeing none, I see none in the audience also. We will move forward. We have no declared conflicts of interest. And we'll begin with our first scheduled item. Item number 1, a public hearing on Council Bill R-2020-18, establishing the maximum refuse collection and disposal rates beginning July 1st of 2020. And I apologize, I'm hearing my voice in my head and it's throwing me
Yes,
off.
Pull the mic closer to your mouth.
I don't know if that's going to help. There's a delay, and then through the headphones, so I can hear myself like a
yeah,
half
because
second.
the microphone will go through the Zoom, so this work.
No, I understand it works, but there's a delay, so maybe I should take my headphones off?
I'm taking mine off,
Okay.
and then if somebody from Zoom wants to speak, I'll put them on.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right. That's much better. Yeah, right. Okay, Public Works.
Yes, on this item, I would like to have Jeff Peterson present this report, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. You're seeing me again. Must be time for rates to go up. As you know, we have a franchise agreement with CR&R. It was awarded by this body a couple years ago. And in that contract, they have an ability to ask for a COLA, or based on a cost of living adjustment based on current situations, which we have used the consumer price index for that particular number. There are several components to the rate, collection and disposal. And disposal has the landfill, it has as well as diversion. Diversion can be from recycling or to alternate daily cover, as well as waste going to another process that creates energy at the CRNR facility. The two components that we are dealing with today has to do with the waste disposal agreement that we have for sending all of our trash to the landfill. And that's an agreement with the county that gives us a favorable rate. That particular rate went down this year, which helped to offset the CPI. What you have is the results of sending out the notice to all our residents, 5,100 residents. We had a handful of respondents, 5, I believe, that came in. The rate effect on the residents is 43 cents a month that it's going to go up total. The rates on some of our commercial accounts goes up a bit more because they have a different component system. They send their trash differently because it goes mostly into the waste stream. It's hauled differently because they also have to employ the waste to energy program with their food waste. But as you see, if they have 4 cubic yards or more per week, they are required by state regulations to send their food waste to an alternate diversion, which CNR is taking it and changing it into electricity. They're mulching it up, and the byproduct is methane gas, which gets cleaned up, and they use it to power their vehicles.
And before we contracted with CNR, it was the same agreement with the prior?
The regulations are fairly new. So that component has been placed on us more recently. The previous franchise agreements are fairly competitive, yes. They're fairly, very similar in what they provide.
Ron, I think what you might be asking is, CRNR bought out our last provider, correct?
Yes,
And we had a long-term contract with that provider. CRNR bought them up about, what, 3-4 years ago?
yes.
Yes, Republic was the original company. And then about 3 years ago, some of us went down and toured. What he's talking about is that anabolic digestion facility, which was pretty impressive in the way that they recycle.
I just want to be sure that in the process of finding out, it's now not beginning to impact.
Right. Yeah. And Jeff, I'll let you finish. I was going to.
Milford Harrison's on CO2s.
Yes. I did a little research on my own for the agenda item, and I found it appears we're still consistently lower than most of the surrounding cities.
Yes, we are.
Which is really bizarre to me. It's a good thing, but we are quite lower than most of the cities around us. Specifically, Redlands was very, very high. And then I noticed the CPI, or you described it as a COLA, is normally 3% a year, but this year was offset by 1% because of the 1% reduction in their costs and the overhead to dispose, correct?
Correct.
You know why Redlands is pricey?
Because they run their own.
They pave their streets with their trash collection charges.
Interesting.
Explain that a little more.
Yes.
As you recall, they had really poor street maintenance for a long time. Yeah. And they didn't have the budget to fix it. So what they did is they raised on the principle that trash trucks are heavy and beat up the streets. They raised their internal trash hauling rates and use it to pave the streets. So all that paving that's going on is why their trash rates are so high.
Interesting.
Additionally, CRNR has been helping us with our annual report to the state, and they've done a fantastic job keeping us in compliance. 20 years ago, we weren't doing such a good job, and we were called to the carpet on that one.
Yeah.
And since then, we've been very diligent in handling what needs to be done as far as getting our diversion rates into an acceptable range.
That's an interesting thing to talk about, and I think it's worth noting. What you're bringing up is the state requires us as a city to dispose of things in certain ways, which is really why we have the different containers, and they have programs such as the anabolic digestion facility and things like that, which helps keep us in compliance, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if there's anything else, I'll let you all discuss.
So at this point, we open the public comment. Let me put my headphones in, see if I can do this. Any member of the public wishing to speak on this item, either raise your hand via Zoom or in the audience.
You've got a hand on Zoom.
Do we have one?
Yeah, Milford is looking to make a speech.
Your Honor, this is Milford Harrison. I'm the Government Relations Director for CR&R, and we appreciate immensely the relationship with the City of Loma Linda, and you do have the lowest rates around, and that's something that we have been very happy to maintain. And of course, we know that if we didn't, we would hear from your city manager pretty strongly. So we've really tried to toe the line on that. It's a privilege to offer this service to the City of Loma Linda. It's of the various cities that I'm familiar with, Loma Linda is by far the best city to serve. In addition to everything else that we do, as you probably have noticed, we outfitted the entire city with new trash carts, and they comply with the new color regulations by the state of California. And as you look at some other cities around, you won't find those yet. But we think it also makes the city look better. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And we appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve Loma Linda.
Thank you, sir. Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll entertain a motion from the council.
I'll move Council Bill, I can't, got too much equipment on here. I'll move Council Bill R-2020-18.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a couple of seconds. Madam Clerk, we have to do all accounting roll call, so.
Okay, the motion is to adopt Council Bill R 2020-18, establishing the maximum refuse collection and disposal rates effective July 1, 2020, and repealing Resolution 3021, excuse me. Please respond when I call your name. Councilman Jindal? Aye. Councilman Leonard? Aye. Councilman Rigsby? Yes. Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper? Yes.
Thank you. It passes unanimously.
Thank you. And moving on to item number 2, Council Bill R-2020-19, approving of the annual report and assessments for the Landscape Maintenance District 1. I expect there to be some discussion with this one.
Mr. Mayor, Council, as you see, it's the Landscape Maintenance District. It was brought before you last meeting, introduced. You have the reports. It is to set the rates per the report. I know that there is a component that is of concern having to do with the difference between what we collect and what we owe. That difference is approximately $104,000, and that's the contribution that the city makes to make up the difference. Most of that is because the first 50 areas of annexation did not have a CPI in it. No COLA was in those first 50 units. We're up to number 78 now, I believe.
Can you step a little closer to the mic?
The annexations since Jarv and I have come here all have a an escalator so that they can make an adjustment based on the report, but the first 50 do not. And that is probably why we are experiencing this shortfall. We have a very good contractor that is extremely reasonable, and we like to keep him working and continue with the program. I'm sure you all wish to discuss this.
Don't go anywhere.
If we had a way to cut it, we would.
Maybe to kind of expand so the public understands some of the questions that we've had in the past, can you explain the process if we were to want to raise the CPI, so to speak, in that district? What would be the process?
For the first 50?
Yes.
For the first 50, we'd have to do a cost-benefit analysis and a report justifying that those costs. We have looked into it with a consultant concerning that. There have been new rules and regulations that affect LMDs since they were first begun. The rate of success for voluntarily adding your tax, a tax increment to yourselves is very small as far as.
Right, but can you explain that? So it requires a vote.
It requires a vote of each district, yes, sir.
So they would be required to increase taxes on themselves.
On themselves, correct.
Which
is very unpopular.
It's a very hard thing to do. So because we can't get people to tax themselves, we end up covering the shortfall, more or less, correct?
Correct.
Any thoughts, comments?
Comment. So we're likely going to agree to this. We have no choice for right now, but I think for next year and for the future, we want to have some kind of study done of what the alternatives can be. So if you look at page 181 of the proposed budget, utilities themselves are $165,000 for 2020, and $180,000 for 2021. Now, what percent would you say is that water?
Jar?
Probably 60%, 70% is for water.
Got it. So we can see that 60 to 70% of that is going towards water. So the bulk majority, if we were to reduce anything in this, it would have to be from the utilities. As we heard, the professional services we can't go any lower than that. And we're probably fortunate that we have a contractor that is so willing to work with us. So as part of that study, I think we need to find what alternatives we have, whether it be xeriscaping, which is having plants and different flora that doesn't consume as much water, so that we can reduce that by 50 to 60%. If we don't do anything, we're going to keep seeing this. We saw this last year as well. So we're looking at a budget deficit over a 10-year period that ranges anywhere from $1.1 million to $2 million, depending on what the contractual agreements look like. So I propose that as we approve this, we have some kind of study done of what alternatives can be done to reduce the utilities for our landscape maintenance.
Okay. That is noted. I would also just kind of piggyback on that and ask the public to make sure you weigh in by contacting your council member and expressing what your desire is. Do we want to be a community that invests in the features of our landscaping? Does that add or attract to our property values and that type of thing, and where do you stand? And I recommend that you contact your local council member so we get a feeling of where the city actually stands on that stuff. So with all that.
If I could, I'd like to comment too.
Yes, sir.
Before we go to public comment. Just bear in mind that every time the council decides we want to conduct a study, that costs tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, as well. And I think what's important for the council to determine before we commission yet another study, what is the outcome that we're seeking? Finances are part of it. finances are a part of everything we do. But I think we need to define just what it is that we're after in terms of landscape outcomes as well. I mean, that was, how many years ago was it, Dusty? We redid the whole median out here for the same purpose.
That was at least 15 years ago.
Okay. And we've redone landscaping in other parts of the city for the same reason as well. So I don't want the public to get the impression that the city council ignores water conservation and effective budgeting, because I don't believe either of those. So I would be resistant to asking staff to hire consultants to do another study until we can provide them with some clarity as to just what the outcomes are we're looking for, what sacrifices we may be willing to make or not make.
Okay. I'm going to open the public comment. I'm going to have to put my headphones in here again.
If you're dialed in by phone, please press *9 at this time, or use the Zoom chat or the raise hand feature to let us know you wish to speak. Thank you.
We'll give folks a second here because I know it takes a minute to dial in if that's what you're going to do. Okay. Seeing none electronic signatures and nobody in the audience, I will entertain a motion from the council.
I'll move Council Bill R 2020-19.
Do you have a first?
I will second it with a comment, and that is for those that are primarily focused on what's this costing us, just drive down Barton Road from Loma Linda to Colton and look at the difference in landscaping when you cross Waterman into Colton. And I can give you multiple other examples. So I do think quality is a standard we need to look at, but clearly the financial impact needs to be a part of that formula as well.
And real quick before we take the vote, I have a comment also. You know, that's always been something that's been very important to this council, the beauty of our city and what sets us kind of apart from other neighboring cities. And we do feel that that's important, and that's what draws people here. But we also understand the economic realities. And so as we have struggled, especially post-COVID, with our finances, like every other city, and we know how overburdened and taxed our employees are. You know, if you don't know, we trimmed down employees 10 years ago during the last downturn, and we've never recovered back to that level that we had back then. And so we have a lot of people that wear multiple hats. I joke about that a lot, but we really do. Our assistant city manager serves as the dog catcher, and that's not a lie. That's the reality. We're very appreciative of what our employees do every day, and we're very thankful. We know there's a lot to do, and we know it's a very hard job, and we're very, very grateful and thankful for that. Another thing, and I was going to bring it up later at the end of the meeting, but I think now is important also. My wife has had an idea for a while now, and we've been talking about it. And we started off on our kind of inaugural day on Sunday, and we brought the family out, and we are going to make this a weekly event on Sundays. And our goal is we're going to clean up trash along the city streets. And we're going to pick different areas of the city every week, and whoever wants to join us is more than welcome. Like I said, we did a little beta test on Sunday. It was just me, the kid, and the wife, and we did Anderson and Redlands Boulevard. And let me tell you, there's a lot of just stuff out there that we can pick up. And I think it's just as important that if we ask for 110% from our employees that we as citizens are willing to give back as well. So no arm twisting, but anybody who wants to join us, we're looking at this Sunday, probably at 9 in the morning, and we're going to do either a section of Barton Road from Mountain View, one of the directions, or maybe that intersection. And more or less just picking up a lot of the plastics and things like that that are very obvious, you know. It's not necessarily going to save the world, but it's going to do our part, and we feel that's important, especially in the center medians, so.
So Mayor, one more comment since there's been two comments. No one's saying that the city has to look less beautiful. There are grasses out there that basically look the same, they just require less water. So I'm saying we have an opportunity to do both. We can save funds. Again, it's going to cost us anywhere from $1.1 to $2 million over 10 years. And at the same time, we can actually make the city look more beautiful. There are a lot of options out there. Other cities such as Eastville and Riverside have used them because, again, they do make the city look better, which is, again, why I would urge that we at least look into this. We don't have to agree on what we want right now. But when we're talking about $1 to $2 million, I think it's definitely worth looking into.
And when we determine if we're going to actually hire or contract with a consultant, then I want to see the numbers itemized, because I can't disagree with your numbers, but I don't know how you generated those. Those are numbers I'm not at all familiar with.
So we're $104,000. We're taking $104,000 out of our general fund for the landscape maintenance. Right?
This year.
Yes, so you multiply that out by 10 years, including inflation, you're going to have at least $1.1 million. So we've taken money out of the general fund last year as well to cover the landscape maintenance.
How much did we take out last year? So there you go. It's going to vary from year to year. We can't just assume a single standard.
No, the 5,000, it was taken out of the general fund, but last year there was also more money in the available cash balance. So that was tapped into, and then because we depleted that cash balance, there was another 5,000 taken out from the general fund. So that total was what, about 90, it was a little over 90,000, right?
And my point isn't to debate the numbers now. I haven't done my homework, so I'm not comfortable debating numbers. But I think we need to develop outcomes that we would expect from and priorities from a consultant, because we spend big bucks to hire them, and identify what the priorities are within those outcomes, and then we can look at the finances at the same time.
Agreed.
But when you look at the size of our budget, we can do that at another time. Tonight's not the night.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Madam Clerk, would you call the vote?
The motion is to adopt Council Bill Number R-2020-19, approving the annual report and assessments for Landscape Maintenance District Number 1 for fiscal year 2020-2021. When I call your name, please respond. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard?
Yes.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Per Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to related item will be the approval of our annual report and assessment for Streetlight Benefit Assessment District, or street lighting.
You might be getting tired of seeing me.
Never, never.
This is a bit better note. This is the Streetlight Maintenance District. This was also introduced last meeting. You have the reports. This one is a balanced budget. The amount that goes out is what comes in. So there is no contribution by the general fund. We have been working diligently with our streetlights. We own about half of the streetlights here in town. There's half are owned by the Edison Company, and half are by the city. You see the ones on the wood poles, those are actually the Edison Company, and the ones on the marble lights are the city-owned. You'll notice that ours are rapidly changing from the high-pressure sodium into the LEDs, which are much more cost-effective, they're energy efficient, and the cost for the units themselves are half of what they were when we started doing the change-outs. About 10 years ago, I think it was. Here is the report. You're welcome to discuss.
Hey, Jeff, real quick before you walk away, I'm sorry. I know. What, we keep asking every year, what percentage are we there getting closer to being 100% LED? Do you know what that is this year? We were pretty close last year.
Yes, we're on ours, not the Edison
The Edison ones,
units.
correct.
Just our units. Although Edison did try to sell off theirs for a very high dollar that we chose not to do when they made that offer. We just didn't have the funding. And their sales pitch was, well, if you own them, then you can change them out to LEDs. We're not going to. Well, that lasted about 2 years, and now they're changing them out on their own. So everybody is going to the LEDs.
Okay.
Electricity, Edison.
Yes, we do. It's a bill that comes through. I believe they charge us, I think it's $15 per light, I think is what the charge is. It's a flat rate that they charge.
Per month or per year?
I think it's per year. But I could be
For
wrong.
the electricity?
For the electricity, because they don't use.
That's way below cost.
Maybe it's per month. Maybe it's
That would
per
have,
month.
that's way below cost,
Yeah, maybe it's per month.
yeah. If it's that cheap, they can keep them.
That's what we said.
Yeah.
We have very limited resources, and we'd like to be good stewards.
A lot of cities have elected, though, to purchase those from Edison, correct? Because then they control
Correct.
the aesthetics and the
Correct.
maintenance and all that.
The cost at that time was something, what, $50,000? It was a high dollar that just, we couldn't swallow that one.
Okay, I'm going to open the public comment. Nobody's jumping up and down to speak on this item? Okay, we're going to close the public comment, and we'll entertain a motion.
I'll move Council Bill R 2020-20. I just wanted to say the 320s fast. I was hoping R was the 20th letter of the alphabet, but only the 17th, so it's
Yeah.
not quite there.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Madam Clerk?
The motion is to adopt Council Bill Number R-2020-20, approving the annual report and assessments for the Streetlight Benefit Assessment District for fiscal year 2020-21. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard?
Yes.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
Thank you. It passes unanimously.
Okay, moving on to our fourth item. And this will be a modification to our prior approval of the comprehensive sign program.
Mr. Mayor, council members. So this is as the mayor said, a minor modification to an approved sign program. The reason it's before you tonight is you had approved this sign program back in December of 2017. It's related to updating the signage and wayfinding as part of the medical center program. As this has evolved, there were 5 sites that required a little bit of adjustment. Typically, those things are approved at an administrative level, but the adjustment was just a little bit out of the scope of what we felt comfortable approving administratively. So it comes before the council to make these approvals. As we say, it does fall within the conditions of approval. It just exceeds that 10% threshold, or what we feel comfortable is that 10% threshold. And then it is a minor modification, and the signs and everything that we're presenting are permitted by code and allowed institutional zone. So what we see is, and if you look at your packet, you have the site locations. Site number 1, that site typically would have 2 monument signs kind of right next to each other, which looks awkward and doesn't really convey the message. So that is an oversized sign and wouldn't typically be allowed, but as part of the sign program, we can allow that. Sign number 2 are just pedestrian wayfinding signs we find around sidewalks and walkways. But those weren't part of the original program, so we're including those. Sign number 3 is one additional vehicular sign. You're kind of starting to see those popping up around campus, the big directional signs of the slabs on the side of the street with the pictures on the back. 4 really is just to exceed the square footage that's typically allowed on a sign for a building. By adding the word adult, it exceeds the square footage by a little bit. And then number 5 is on the fence, kind of as a screening and directional sign. We don't have a mechanism outside of a special sign program to allow that, and it wasn't part of the original submittal. So the project is exempt from CEQA, and it has no environmental impacts and doesn't require environmental inputs. So staff recommends that you approve the minor modification to the previously approved sign program based upon the findings in the staff report and subject to the attached conditions of approval. Any questions?
I don't see any questions here on the dais. So we will open it up again for public comment. I don't see anything either here in the audience or on the screen. So we will close the public comment, and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move, what do we have here? What am I moving? I was waiting for Leonard or Duper, or, I'm sorry, Dusty, but.
I was just about to, but then you
Oh,
cut in.
go for it, if you've got the numbers.
Just call it the staff recommendation.
I'll move the staff recommendation to approve plan number P20071. Is that sufficient?
Second.
Works for me.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Real quick comment. I looked in depth at the signs that were proposed, and I think they look very nice. And I think it's all, again, part of what they've already got going up, and it'll look really nice out there. So, congratulations, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The motion is to approve minor modification to approved plan number P20-071 to modify the previously approved comprehensive sign program number P17-139 that established sign criteria and guidelines for signage at the new Loma University Medical Center. The amendments include replacement of 2 monument signs for 1 large sign, additional vehicular signs, new exterior wayfinding signs, and a minor change to 1 wall sign. And based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard?
Aye.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve it?
Move it.
I have a motion. I have a second. Madam Clerk?
And the motion is to approve the consent calendar. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard?
Aye.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. No items under old business. Under new business, we have a joint meeting of the City Council and Housing Authority regarding our fiscal year 2020 and 21 budget. And I will open up the Housing Authority also, so we can have this joint meeting. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, I would like Diana to present the first part, and then I will follow.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Just as a reminder, on May 7th, we had a workshop, a joint workshop with the Budget Committee to discuss the proposed budget, and we also went over the current year impacts of the stay-at-home and shelter-in-place executive order by the governor and what we projected to be our current year ending numbers for the budget. And as usual, we discuss in summary the general fund, which is our key operating fund. We'll discuss the unassigned fund balance, assigned and committed fund balance. And then we have the city as a whole, which includes all the funds. It's the general fund, our enterprise funds, which are our water, sewer, connected communities, and then special revenue funds, capital funds, and our debt service funds. We also have the Loma Linda Housing Authority, which we'll discuss. This is a look at our general fund, what we project to be our ending fund balances for the current year with the projected changes for the shelter in place and also for the proposed budget year. So we are proposing that this year we will be ending with about 2.9 million. Unassigned fund balance. Assigned fund balance, we still have the 1.2 million, and then committed, we still have 2 million. So total, we still have the 6.2 million for the current year that we're projecting will be ending. For the proposed budget for 2021, again, we will be having unassigned fund balance of 2.4 million. Our assigned fund balance will not change. It'll still be the 1.2 million. And then our committed is the 2 million. So we are proposing a deficit spending budget for this fiscal year, for the next fiscal year, sorry, of about 500,000. So this just covers where we started the current year and then where we're projecting our ending. With the changes we made to the current year budget after the mid-year budget for the revenue losses we are projecting, we will have 18.5 million in revenues, and then we are projecting still about 22.9 million in expenditures, which will bring us to our ending of 2.9 million. And then in the next year proposed budget, we are reducing our revenues from the current year levels that we had originally budgeted. So we are projecting lower revenues, especially in the area of our sales tax, our TOT tax, our business license tax. We're projecting some revenue losses for the first quarter and into second quarter. We're hoping we recover by third and fourth quarter.
Let me add, the reason this current fiscal year, we have a deficit, and the reason for that was we paid down our unfunded liability by over $2 million. $2 million from general fund and about $500,000 from sewer and water fund.
Mm-hmm.
So actually 2.5 million.
Yes. And then
But in
me.
addition to that, the whole pandemic shutdown has had a significant impact.
Yes, sir.
on this as
Yes, sir.
well.
Yes, sir.
So what we did in paying it down was a good thing. Yes, sir. But we couldn't anticipate what's happened in the first quarter of the year.
Correct. And then we are proposing to reduce our expenditures to 20.2 million for the proposed fiscal year. So we will end with the 2.4 million in our unassigned fund balance. These are the comparison of our top revenues. Again, the current year we did adjust for the loss in revenue we are estimating. since our mid-year budget proposals. So you will see some significant number reductions here. And then you will see the uptick for the proposed coming year. So we are projecting a major loss in the current year. In sales tax, it was about 2.2 million in sales tax we're proposing. And so next year, we are proposing reduced from historical sales tax for the first and second quarter. And then overhead, this year, there were projects that, because of delay in the shelter in place, that didn't get completed. So our overhead revenues for the current year are lower than we anticipated. So hopefully next year, when we can resume projects and complete, we'll have a higher revenue for overhead. Then the MLV fees, that's the motor vehicle license fee that we get. We get it actually through a property swap with the state. So those are actually based on property assessed valuation. So we are seeing an increase in those revenues for the next year. Also, property tax, we are seeing some uptick in property tax. So we are projecting an increase. Our refuse, there are rate increases programmed into the current budget, so we are projecting increases. We kept the law enforcement at the current level. We are still negotiating with Loma Linda University for the contract. And then franchise fee, we are projecting an increase based upon rates that are already in the contracts. So this brings us to our total general fund revenue for next year of the 19.3 million.
Can I ask a question on the last slide?
Sure.
When you say that we're still negotiating regarding law enforcement at the medical center, is this the deputies that we worked with them to hire for emergency department and so forth, or what?
Correct.
That's it? And so why are we doing the negotiating? I would think they would be negotiating with sheriff's department.
No, the contract to the sheriff is through the city. So what,
okay.
so what happened is, right now, we have deputy that work there 3/4 of the time. And the city pay for it first, and then the university reimburses for it.
Okay.
But what happening is, the agreement that we have with them was that we were willing to give back some of the mercantile funding that the city received to pay for,
I see.
pay for the police services. But because they never signed an agreement, we still hold that money. We haven't paid it back. I mean, we still hold that money,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So until they come back and revise or sign the agreement, then we will use that money to help pay for the police services.
Okay,
But right
but-
now, we send them invoice every month, and they pay us every month.
But I assume the understanding we have is that the negotiation is occurring between the city and the sheriff's department, and our agreement with the medical center is they will reimburse whatever we negotiate.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And these are our expenditures for the general fund that we are proposing. Again, we take a conservative view, and we were asked to cut wherever we could for the proposed coming year. So the major reduction you'll see here is for the unfunded liability payment in the general government of about $2 million that we made. So you'll see the reduction in that line item significantly. And then you'll see an increase for police services based upon the contract. And then we are seeing a reduction in community development for building development. Major activity occurred in the current year, so next year we'll see a reduction for the building activity and the contract with Wildan that we have. Fire services, we are seeing reduction in fire services. They did have a significant reduction in insurance premiums due to some payments that were in prior years. So this coming year, they will have some reduction for insurance payments. And public works, there were cuts due to capital facilities, repairs and maintenance. At mid-year, we had come to you and proposed to do like one-time capital improve repairs and maintenance based upon the prior year ending that we had a good year ending. So we had proposed some one-time expenditures, so those are reflected in the current year higher numbers, and we won't be doing those in the following year.
Hey, can I ask a question real quick on the insurance for the
Correct.
fire department? Isn't that based on our rating and the high rating that we get, which drives those numbers down?
Correct.
So based on the high level of service and the high quality that we have here, that's how come we get the reduction in the insurance?
That, and then historical, if there's any claims, and then they roll over, and so the previous claims have fallen off the schedules.
Just like, almost like what we do with the JPIA.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so, but it's important to note that because of the service that we have in our fire department and our fire marshal and all the other things that they do, that drives down those rates for us as a city.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point. Could we get a little more detail on when I see a percent change of decrease by 70%, 12%, and 13%? Can you elaborate a little bit more on each of those so I understand
In
them
the
better?
70%, that was the big payment of $2 million for the unfunded liability that we made in the current year. So next year, we're not budgeting any additional payments.
That's
for that.
PERS?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the community development, that was for building activity for our contractual services with Wildan. We had a lot of activity in the current year for building permits and
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like that. So that happened this year, so next year.
So
we're not
even in
seeing-
spite of the whole development of Area D, we still expect that's going to decrease?
What happening is, this current year, we did a lot of plan checking for all this plan, and so that's completed. So next year is only inspection services.
For the housing,
Correct.
huh?
So all those building permits, the plan checks,
Yeah.
paying for the inspection, we collected that money this year, although the inspections are performed next year. So
Okay, okay.
the work happens in advance.
And
Then
then we
are we
wouldn't
still
see
moving
anything-
forward with the development of the business enterprise down there as well?
But we won't see that until the following year, most likely.
Yeah, it'll be a year or two before that comes through.
Okay,
We're in the tail end of dealing with the developer on that.
okay. It's a single developer for the whole enterprise there?
It will be one developer for the entire piece, and that'll
Okay.
come to you as the oversight board.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, in Public Works?
Public Works, again, those were items in the current column, the current fiscal year. We came to you at mid-year for additional capital repairs and maintenance. So in next year, we aren't proposing some of those repairs and maintenance because those were one-time items.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. That's why you make the big bucks, Jan.
Oh.
Thank you.
And then, next slide. So this just kind of reflects the change in overall fund balance. So including our assigned and unassigned, assigned, and our committed. So we start off the year with the 6.2, and then we have our revenues, our expenditures that we just discussed, and we're going to be ending it with the 5.6. So this becomes a negative fund balance change of $563,400. So the next slide is the overall city, and this includes all the funds as we were discussed. It includes the water, sewer, the capital, and the special revenues. So this includes the whole city. So I know we discussed it all in the workshop, so I'm going to just go briefly. But overall, the city, we are actually going to be adding fund balance in the current year. So if you could go to the next slide. And this just covers the overall revenues as far as we are increasing revenues as opposed to the current year, because we are seeing the major reductions in the current year for the adjustments made. So general fund, we are seeing an increase in revenue sewer fund, increase in revenue. And then the LLCCP, a small increase due to the rates. Again, the water fund increased due to, well, we are seeing a reduction in water, and that's actually some reduction in some special revenues coming into the water fund. And then the capital, we are seeing activity due to development activity, so development impact fees that will be projected to be paid in the current year. And then other funds, we are seeing just a decrease in the other funds. And this could be a special revenues, Measure I, any gas tax, we're seeing that the state is projecting lower numbers due to either consumption or the people staying at home and then potentially getting back to work. So we are seeing reduction in some of those numbers coming to the city from outside agencies. And these reflect our expenditures. So we discussed the general fund, the sewer fund. We are projecting a reduction in expenditures. The LLCCP, we've made some reallocation, and we are seeing a reduction in the LLCCP. The water fund, again, we are seeing reduction due to some major projects. We're hoping to complete the change out of the meters in the water fund, so we're seeing a reduction for that capital projects. And then for capital funds, we are planning on doing some major projects in the capital fund for, JARB has some street improvements going on and some major, I think California is one of the major ones that we're projecting for those. And again, in other funds, we are seeing a reduction in those expenditures. So overall, as a city, again, we started out with 38.3 million. We're going to have revenues of 46 million. We're expending 44.5 million, and we're ending with 39.8 million. So we are adding overall to the city funds of 1.5 million. And this is our housing authority. So we still operate the housing authority. We do still do some low mod housing funding. This year we had a contract with Mary Erickson, so we did have a major expenditure in the current year for that project and that contractual agreement. So next year the revenue sources will be consistent for the loan payments that we are collecting and then just operational expenditures that we incur. So we are pretty much only adding about $30-some thousand to the housing authority.
Question on the housing authority, the low-income housing mandate. Where are we at with achieving the expected outcome on that?
They just changed the numbers again.
Yes, it's getting worse.
We talked about that before, yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Yes, the state just increased the RENA numbers to every city,
Right,
including Loma Linda, and it's bad, but.
So we're still not where because we thought we were.
We were at a
pretty
We were, as a matter of fact, we have
were at like
more surplus.
120%.
Yes.
We were at a surplus.
We have more, for very low and low, but now we're not, so.
Okay.
They discuss it at SBCTA a lot, so.
But RENA is not the same thing as low and mod housing. RENA is a planning change, not an actual accomplishment change. So did the requirements for actual building change from 15% of housing stock to a higher number, which puts us in a deficit, or did we just get higher RENA numbers, which means that we need to have a certain amount of high density in our general plan?
We have higher RENA numbers.
Okay, so that doesn't require us to actually build anything. RENA is
Correct.
just a planning thing.
The RENA numbers went up, the requirement for building did not.
Okay.
With that, though, at some point in the next year, we are going to be seeing some coming to you with upzoning areas for increased density, because right now we do not have enough zoning to to build the number of required arena units.
That's the plan all along, is to force the zoning changes, I believe.
So you're saying I'm sorry, was having a hard time hearing you, but the arena numbers or planning numbers have gone up. What's the timetable on that? Did I hear you say a year?
It'll be actually, you're going to accept the grant, or you just accepted the grant for that tonight on the consent calendar for us to start that planning project, to work through the zoning, do the study, to determine what the zoning density would be. But we're anticipating that a fairly significant chunk of the city will shift from single-family to multifamily zoning because of the RENA requirements. All RENA requires is that you have the available zoning to build the buildings. Does not require that the buildings be built. And that then happens in the development phase.
Is our current housing plan approved?
Our current housing plan is approved, however, we had the 8-year cycle. I think we have 2 years left on that. So that's part of that grant will be covering the beginning of the housing element. With the finances the way they are this year, we dialed that back to not be as aggressive. We really want to have it done this fiscal year, but we're going to take it a little bit slower and see if we can push that out and not. Typically, a housing element costs somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million to do the whole general plan and the housing element. And that's
So
just
the
something
state tried with legislation to eliminate zoning, and they couldn't get that through, so this is the roundabout way?
This is the roundabout way to upzone properties. So we're working on the process. Sometime in the next year and a half, you will be seeing that before you.
I have one other question, but it's a different topic. What was it, a couple of months ago, the feds passed a $2-3 trillion, whatever it was, PPP, and part of that money was supposed to go to...
CARES Act.
Huh?
The CARES Act.
Yes, thank you. Was supposed to help communities and cities deal with the consequences of pandemic, or I'm wrong about that?
That is a second $3 trillion that has not been approved yet.
Oh, that's proposed but not
Correct.
approved.
Correct.
Okay.
The
I
first
just wanna be
$3
sure we
trillion
get
went
our
to the
bid in.
resident. Went to the citizen, not resident, went to the citizen.
The second 3 was passed by the House, but has not been taken up by the Senate, nor probably will it. The first bill, the extra $3 trillion was passed by the House, but the Senate shows no tendency to pass it.
Yeah. The problem was kind of the absurdity of the bill in that, and I sat on a phone call with our Congressman Pete Aguilar, and basically he was trying to drum up support from the cities in that a city would declare what their actual COVID costs were. So for example, Redlands is declaring a $15 million shortfall. So what the promise was, if this $3 trillion package passed, was Redlands, you will get $75 million or whatever. And so it was very enticing for local government to sign on to it, but it was actually almost unrealistic. It wasn't a true reflection of the cost. It was a kind of absorbent. So that's why I don't think that there's a flavor to continue it.
It's called politics.
It's called politics.
Okay, thanks.
It's called printing money.
So in conclusion, in addition to our usual conservative revenue projections, staff has incorporated estimates due to the COVID-19 impact and has prudently proposed expenditures for the general, specifically for the general fund. And then for the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021, we are including the $2.4 million in unassigned, our $1.25 million in assigned, and we still have the $2 million in committed funds. So we still will have overall funding for the general fund of $5.6 million.
Good report, Daniel. Thank you.
Next item is the recommendation from the Budget Committee. Is on the, it's in the package right before the 5-year CIP. if you look in your package before this 5-year CAP, there's a recommendation from the Budget Committee, and I asked Jay Gallant to come, but I guess not. so he-
Jay is online.
Oh,
and,
good.
He is available to speak. So if that is where we're at in the order of the program, I would invite Jay to jump on.
I don't see him.
He's got his hand up, so I think he's ready. Jay, the floor is yours.
And kind of save some time, if the recommendations that were made, if there were anything that you guys
I
felt
can hear
like,
headphones. Sorry, Jay, one sec. We have to put our headphones on, otherwise we won't hear you. Go ahead, sir.
to kind of save time, instead of, I normally go through the whole recommendation, but if reviewing the recommendations, I think there were 5 of them. If you have any questions on those recommendations of accepting them as our recommendations, I would entertain any questions on those.
Question for Jarb. So the 5th recommendation, just wanted to make sure that's already built in, right?
I'm sorry, what is your question again?
The 5th recommendation,
1, 2, 3. Yes.
it's built in the current budget proposal, right?
And future, I'm not, he talking about the 2021.
Right. So we're good with
So-
that. It's already, at least for the 2021, it's already adjusted?
Yes, it's part of the Schedule A that you will approve that tonight.
Got it. Thank you.
And I don't remember seeing that in our documentation. What did that actually say?
No, it is in the budget booklet, is the police contract, how much it's gonna cost for next fiscal year.
This one's about the city council. Reducing city compensation.
Oh, okay, no, that reducing the city council,
I think it's talking about all city employees. Doesn't
no,
say.
it's not. Is his is the budget committee recommendation, but we have not moved on that. The city staff did not include that in here.
Got
That's
it.
why it's come to the city council.
Jay, can you just briefly go through your 5 recommendations, because either my packet was incomplete or I left something at home.
You can have mine. I've got my
Okay.
digital copy.
Okay, the first recommendation is not to use any of the rainy day fund for any,
Oh, wait a minute. No, I can't.
in which Jarb is already included in there. We also believe that the Budget Committee believes that the city services should be maintained at current levels, and so not to cut those at this time, and which is also reflected in the budget. The third one, the budget should reflect the general economy, and as things get better, those items that are taken away, such as the concessions made by the department heads, be replaced as appropriate at that time in first order rather than waiting until later if funds are available. The fourth one, the allocation of maintenance throughout the city still has to be maintained. Anything that's being contributed to future maintenance should still be budgeted into, so that it's not a shortfall at a later time. The next one is police services. the Budget Committee noticed that they're the only department in effect that did not take a drop because of the contract is directly with them. And the Budget Committee thinks that maybe it's time to try and find a point at which is there a cheaper way to get the same services through another provider, and even going to the thought of even bringing it in-house. Those are just ideas for if we can't get anything better and it's the only thing that cannot be reduced, even in the world pandemic, to have an adjustment when everybody else is taking a haircut seems inappropriate all the way around. The last one is just as before, the Budget Committee had recommended in the last Great Recession that the City Council take a slight cut as a gesture to be shared sacrifice in that. And again, we're finding ourselves going into another. Definitely, the U.S. government says we are now officially in a recession as of February. So it's not a matter of when, but it is now. And if the City Council would want to share in that sacrifice by reducing their compensation. So those are the recommendations.
Okay. I mean, the reduction in city council compensation is decimal dust, but I understand your point.
Yes, it is a gesture. It's not significant, and it's not going to change anything. But it does show the city and the city services employees that you're in this too.
Okay, I understand and don't think I have much problem with the 1 through 3. In terms of number 4, police services, looking for all alternate providers or bringing them in-house, that one I'm having a hard time understanding.
Well, it's only a measure to try to press the point with our provider that in this particular time, they're the only non-negotiable unit when they should be negotiable in the middle of an extreme crisis. So, you know, it's almost like somebody, in effect, with the toilet paper goes up from $1 a roll to $5 a roll, and he just sits there, and there's a shortage. I'm not going to negotiate.
Yeah, so are you recommending that we either reduce police services or ask them to take a cut similar to what you're asking other entities to do?
I would expect that they, due that the whole state is going to take a 10% cut, according to what Newsom has indicated. It seems awfully odd that in effect, a sub-state entity, a county agency will not follow in some kind of order like that. And so now we have an agency that's part of the state government system, and it's not following even the top down or even from us going from bottom up, and it's holding constant in the middle.
So if I'm understanding you, you're suggesting that they reduce the cost of the police services, not reduce police services?
That is correct.
Okay.
Just like we're not reducing our maintenance and everything else that we're doing, and we're cutting what we can to be able and still do the same.
Okay.
Jarb, have you had any of those conversations? Can you enlighten us?
Pardon me?
Have you had those conversations? I know the city managers meet with the sheriff, and you guys have a voice to some degree, so what?
Yes, we did. We did had a meeting with the sheriff, McMahon, and what he said was the agreement with the unions group was before this COVID-19 crisis. So the sheriff have to go with the original agreement that he had with all the union group with the county with the sheriff.
Do you know if there's any concessions or anything that occur now going forward, if that will affect the cost of the contract?
Yes, because the agreement that they have with lieutenant and captain was like 5% for the next 5 years. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Reduce 5%?
No, salary increase going up.
So did they give you an indication that they would pass that savings along to us? Should
No,
they?
no, 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 no,
take
no.
that?
It's a salary increase. It's a salary increase to those lieutenant and the captain.
Right, but if the county asks for concessions from those employees, will the county then reduce our cost?
That's possible.
Do you know if that's the case or not?
I don't know. But Rancho asked for it, we asked for it, Grand Terrace has asked for it, but the answer is no, so.
Reductions in
Correct,
cost.
yes. And the reason being was that they already have an agreement, a proven agreement with all those union group.
So part of this recommendation includes the last sentence, alternate providers, and even bringing the service in-house to Loma Linda. Have those been explored? If those would provide the same level of service and be at a reduced cost?
I did look at that before. I have been asked by the city council to take a look at other services. So I didn't go very far, but what I did was I called the city manager for city of Highland, which they have population of, I'm sorry, I take it back.
They have
That
their
was
own
the fire
police
department. That was the fire department that I look at, but not the
Yeah.
police. Yes, I look
Yeah.
at the fire department, not the police.
But Redlands,
Yes, and the thing with, they cost more.
that's what I've always understood.
And to have our own, I think it was cost more because we are a small city and we don't have that many deputies that patrol all the time. But if we have an incident, we have the deputy from the county, from Grand Terrace, from other location that come assist us.
So Jay, if I could just ask one more question, and then I'll leave it to the rest of the dais. I've always understood that one of the reasons that we contract with county sheriff is because of the economies of scale. So that's why I'm a little puzzled at the prospective recommendation that we may hire our own police department.
I think there is a price point in which that changes. I don't know exactly where that price point is. I don't know if we were close or real far away. Economies of scale are fine, except that if it keeps on rising, in which it sounds like the union has made sure that it will continue to rise, and even in could be possibly a deep recession, it makes sense at some point to sit there and entertain either you contract out with, say with Redlands, and we add a few and share services between there like we did with Colton and the fire department, where you do have some ability to swap around a little bit more, where you share that between them. Or have a completely private agency kind of come in, besides having just strictly our own. So there's a lot of ways that you could probably do it, but I don't know what that price point is in which, at what time would it be better to make that switch? Is it 10 years from now with the proposed increases, or is it 2 years ago? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I understand, that makes sense to me. But we are talking about a 2021 budget here.
Yes. So it's a concern, a recommendation to put that on a suggestion for you. It wasn't, the recommendation is to take a look, not to make any action on this.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.
So I know we mentioned Highland. Have we taken a look at Redlands? Has that conversation happened in the past?
Not for the police services, we did take a look at the fire services. May I add? If no question, I'd like to add something. So what happened after I saw this recommendation from the budget committee, which is, the recommendation is not to dip into reserve and not cut any services. So that was kind of two main points that I saw from the recommendation. Right now, the way I present this budget to the city council, I'm proposing that we're gonna dip into reserve by $563,000 and keep the same services. At this point, I have not approved the agreement with all the union groups that we have with our employees. And the reason for that is that right now I ask all of them to keep the current salary, current benefit carry over from this year to next year. There's a couple of groups that still ask for the pay increase, benefit increase, and there's a couple of groups that's okay with keep everything the way it is. But, and the reason I have not agreed to any of the group yet, because if the city council go with my recommendation, then we go with everything stay the same for next fiscal year. But.
With the exception of our contract with Sheriff's Department.
Correct. That's not the city employee, that's a contract with the sheriff. But if you go with budget committee recommendation, I have to do a pay cut, which is gonna be the whole different negotiation with all the union groups. So that's the reason why I have not approved a negotiation with all the union groups yet. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the last time we had the budget workshop, we had the same net balance of negative 563.
Correct.
We haven't, so if I understand correctly, we haven't finished negotiations with certain groups yet, which is why it hasn't changed.
Correct. So if it's depend on the city council tonight, if you approve the budget the way I presented it to you, I will go back to all the union groups and say, okay, sorry, I cannot give you a pay increase. Sorry, I cannot give you a benefit increase. Everything stay the same. And then, but if they still insist that they want an increase, I have to come back to you and ask for more allocation.
I don't know if that's bargaining in good faith. And I think we got to be careful there, because using the city council to set a budget and then bargaining on top of that's probably not a great idea. Because now that's setting the finite, and it's not bargaining in good faith.
But the thing is, I don't know the outcome. I don't know what the city council is looking for. Because
What that does is it gives us the latitude, it is a bargaining in good faith, to have the direction from the council that you are willing to have a budget deficit, and that we can approach negotiations one way, or and should there be a requirement for additional funding, we can come to the council for that, and you're clearly aware of what that is. Or you're not willing to have any kind of deficit, which takes certain other items off the table, and we have to look at furloughs and staff reductions. So we can't negotiate one, or we can't negotiate both points at the same one. So what this allows is the council to give us a direction for us to not to agree to something that you're not going to agree to down the road.
So what do those negotiations look like right now, like even an estimate? So right now it's negative 563. How much are we expecting it to increase? Or do you have any kind of even estimate?
I think we're going out of bounds here for what the NLRB allows us to discuss in a public forum. I'm not going to negotiate a labor contract with the labor guys sitting here in city council. And that's, if not, we're all in a federal violation. So we're kind of laying some very broad strokes of what that the labor issue is still to be negotiated and to be closed up. Part of it is just not knowing what was going on, and up until we still don't know what's going on as far as from a financial perspective. So a little bit of time has given us clarity, some direction from council as far as you know, we don't want, we're not willing to dip into reserves, or we are dipping into reserves. Give some direction on how to shape that, and then we can go back and work with the labor unions and get a decent proposal for both. And we have great employees, and the employees have worked with us in the past, and I think we've provided a great environment for them to be in too. So I don't see this as an antagonistic thing. I just see this as an ability for us to get a little better direction so we can sit down and get a little clarity and work forwards.
Yep. I would add to that, Conrad's correct, that tonight's not the night to engage in open negotiations, but rather at a future council meeting in closed session, we can meet with the representative for the negotiations and give specific direction and consider proposals at that time in closed session. Tonight is just setting the overall budget boundaries for the city as a whole, and that is always subject to amendment as time goes on, depending upon changed circumstances, economic changes, as well as the results of those negotiations.
I'd like to hear from Dusty and John. I think the other three of us have kind of laid out where we're at. Come on, you guys are physicians, you're not that polite.
I'm used to not anybody talking back to my patients talking back to me.
You're in politics now.
Yeah, that's true. I understand what Mayor Duper's saying. On the other hand, we have to have some negotiations. We have to have a starting point from where to negotiate. Doesn't mean we can't do something later, and we're already starting out with a deficit. So it seems to me that that's a reasonable position to start with and then move forward from there.
We don't ordinarily budget a deficit, but we don't, even when we do, we don't, in my 14 years on the council, we've never had an actual deficit. So I'm not too worried about the ability of our city manager and staff to work within a very tight budget. These estimates of revenue are extremely crude, and you know, nobody's Nostradamus or anything, so the revenue may not come in nearly as well as what we've projected. We don't project nearly as much reduction as other cities have. We're usually fairly conservative, so I'm sure that we're being conservative now. We also have probably the most well-balanced and rounded revenue stream of any city around, because places like Redlands are highly dependent on sales tax, where we're not, and other cities are highly dependent on property tax revenue, and we are not. So the things that are the most labile in a bad economy don't hit us as hard. So we're blunted a little bit in our pain that we have to endure. But as far as negotiations go, I'm all for, you know, the negotiations going forward, almost without any reference to the budget, other than the fact that, you know, we're in a bit of an economic spiral, and I think all the labor units, and like we've said before, we have an extremely cooperative staff, and the labor relations with our staff have been excellent for many years, and I don't have any doubt that they will come through for us and provide us great service in the future at a price we can afford. So I don't really have any recommendations other than what's coming through. I agree that we can have a nominal target of a deficit, probably will have less than that deficit by the end of the year if JARB has anything to say about it in his expenditures. And the rest is dependent on revenue, which we're just completely passively victims of. We don't get out there and pound the pavement and get any more revenue. It's just, it comes to us. We didn't exact these taxes. They were imposed by prior councils and by prior state governments. We're complete victims of the economy, and we have to live within our means, and that's what we do. That's what I propose, and that's what I support.
I was going to ask, I don't know if, are you getting any type of returns yet from the last couple of weeks, or any ideas of seeing any type of rebound? You know, we see in the news this week, the stock market.
Talking about sales tax?
Yeah, as far as our revenue streams here.
We won't know about the sales tax if how many of the businesses take advantage of the proposals the state put forward as far as the deferral of payments and stuff. We won't see that till next quarter. Kind of those what will hit the books. But just I ran a quick query just on our general fund, and we're about revenues. We're about almost 90% collected, and expenditures were about 89% of our expenditures proposed. So we're doing consistent. So we haven't felt the impact, but it may be coming in the next quarter.
So I will give you my comments on the recommendations. I know that the rainy day fund and our reserves is something we have tightly held on to for many years, and at one time we had quite a large amount of money, and decisions were rightfully and exceptionally made in the last couple of years under the leadership of Dr. Rigsby and others, where we paid down our unfunded liability to the state, which put us in a far better position financially. So we've used that rainy day funds for things other than a rainy day. And in my opinion, this is a rainy day. I don't know that this is normal, economic downturn. I mean, the way this thing all happened, it was so quick and so sudden. I think it's an exigent scenario. So I don't have a challenge using funds right now, whatever we call them, to support our deficit. However, continuing that forward into next year or the year after that, those are the big unknowns, and that's where my comfort level wanes a little bit. I do believe public safety and other vital city services have to be maintained. I will share that not only our fire department, but all of our city employees and everybody, including the sheriff's department, during the whole COVID crisis, were all necessary workers that had to come to work and handled those calls and went out and did what they had to do. And I know of specific examples of our fire department encountering people that were COVID positive and having to get all suited up and do all those things and then go back home to their families. I also know about a couple of the sheriff's deputies that went out on a call and did CPR on a guy that was suspected COVID. So our public safety people in this town do everything that we ask them to do and then some. And even then, they even cover other people in other towns. When my wife and I were out doing our thing on Sunday morning, I watched our fire guys go into San Bernardino to handle calls, because that's what we do. We back our neighbors up, and I feel like we support a lot of the people around us. So I'm always supportive of our employees. I feel like we have made promises along the way to bring people back from where we were years and years ago with the last economic downturn, and it feels like we keep tripping over rocks, and we still haven't quite got back that stuff yet and taken care of our people. And it's important to me when we say we care about our employees that we have to show it. So that's all I'll say in terms of that. I was trying to steer us away, just like Dr. Rigsby said, from tying this into negotiations, because I think negotiations are about what's fair and equitable to our people, and that shouldn't be tied to what we're doing here tonight, however that looks. The general economy, I mean, like we all talked about, it's a wild guess. Where are we gonna go? Obviously, maintenance and all those things are very important things to maintain, and we do that. If you look at our civic projects, our public works projects, repaving our roads every couple of years, doing the things that are preventative that save us in the long run. So I'm confident JARB continues to do that. I am challenged and concerned a little bit about the contract for law enforcement services, because it does appear to be on the outset disparate. And I also understand that that was stuff that was negotiated prior to us entering into anything here. And so the county has a position, and the sheriff has a position on what those services should cost. I'm in favor of exploring any other alternatives. However, I'm pretty confident that we are probably getting the cheapest price point. But I'm in favor of exploring that as long as that doesn't cost us a whole bunch of money to do, like we talked about earlier. So I also suspect, and this is all just pure conjecture, that I do know that the county is asking their employees to take some concessions and deferments. So that was my question to the city manager. If the county imposes those deferments on the county employees, do those cost savings then come back to us as a city? I would expect that they do. I would almost demand that they do, because it's not fair the county save money on our backs. So I think that's definitely something we have to watch and make sure we are involved in. And I know JARB will be the pit bull on that one. I am totally in favor of doing anything that we ask our employees to do. So I would be in favor of any type of cuts to our per diems or anything like that if we ask our employees to do the same. So that's kind of my position. I'm not sure if we need to move through all the other items here, or if we're looking to.
Yes. What
Okay.
I'd like to do is, I'd like to thank you, Jay, and the Budget Committee for working with me and with Diana, with the budget and recommendations.
I gotta say,
so.
Jay is one of the smartest people I know, and I have awesome conversations with him about all kinds of things, and I 100% support what he is saying. And it's a tough position to be in for us.
Okay, we can go to C.
So what are we doing with these recommendations?
I think they want us to move on all of them as a group, or it's when he finishes going through them.
So
Okay,
what I will do, I will continue on.
I'm just trying to get a context of where we're at.
Okay, right now we on item 13B. We'll go to 13C next. And then on item 13J is when you're gonna adopt and approve the next fiscal year budget. And you can say, yes, I agree with you, or no, we don't like your budget, and this is what we'd like to do.
I think he wants to get through everything, because I think there's some options in here that might actually affect
Okay?
what our ultimate decisions are.
So it's a little more fun to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna take my headphones off now.
Okay, so I would like to present the next fiscal year 5-year CAP. This is our new art and public place on Barton Road. So a little introduction for Councilman Jindal. Every year we come to this body and present what we plan to do for the next 5 years with regard to 7, I'm sorry. And that will be fleet, general building, park recreation, sewer, storm drain, street and street light, and water. Okay? Out of this project, the potential funding for all this, a lot of time is this past 19 years, I hardly use any general fund for this project. So we have a tendency to develop an impact fee, grant money, and other sale tax, gas tax money to do the projects. So even though we planned this for 5 years, next 5 years, but the one that really concentrate on is next fiscal year, which is fiscal year 2021. And this is the item that we budget in the budget for next fiscal year. So for fleet, for next fiscal year, we plan to purchase the trailer aerial truck for the fire department in the tune of $1.1 1 million, almost 1.2 million. This truck we purchased it this current fiscal year, but because due to COVID-19, they closed the plant down, so we expecting the truck to come in August. Is that correct? In August.
Might be a little later, but yeah, that is why.
Okay, in late fall.
Yeah.
Okay, and another equipment that we're gonna purchase for the fire department is a fire medic squad. It's for $226,000. And number 3 is to replace the existing 2008 Ford Expedition for the battalion chief. So that will be the funding that we budget for next fiscal year. The first 2 items, number 1, number 2, the funding are coming from the special projects funding, and the third one is coming from general fund. And it's also part of this report in the detail, okay? Next, under general building, for next fiscal year, because we did a lot in general building this current fiscal year because we have a little extra money from last year, so at mid-year budget, we spent a lot of money replacing air conditioning this current fiscal year, replacing LEDs lighting this current fiscal year. So what we plan to do for next year is we receive a $10,000 from the county CDBG to upgrade our restroom building to meet the ADA requirement. We plan to do the EOC expansion, and we plan to do the fire station number 1 remodel to make sure that it meet current ADA requirement. And funding for those 2 projects will come from special projects. Next, park. We plan to, every year, Councilman Jindal, every year we budget money, about $20,000 every year for tree plantings at various park location and city street. We also plan to install the security lighting and camera at our city park in the tune of $60,000. Art and Public Place, Heritage Park improvement, and Lyndon Bailey Park walking track. We're going to want to put a track so people can walk. And all of this funding are coming from the Park Development Impact Fee. Okay? Next is the sewer. This year we did the lining of the sewer at the Jensen Mobile Home Park. So our sewer is in very good shape. And so we wait until we accumulate a little bit more money. We will replace some of the sewer line that go across the railroad track here and do some improvement at this Rancon Street. We probably do that next year or the following years. Storm drain. Storm drain is another infrastructure that's in a very good shape. For next fiscal year, we plan to widen California Street from Orange Street to just past Park Avenue, of which we will also install the storm drain at the same time. The funding for this project will come from Street Development Impact Fee and SBCTA Development Impact Fee also. So we get approval from that, for grant for that. Street improvement. Sorry, it's kind of small. Next fiscal year, we plan to do California Street widening from Orange Street to Park, this piece right here. Funding is coming from Street Development Impact Fee and SBCTA. We plan to put in ADA ramps at various locations. Funding for that is coming from the CDBG grant. We plan to do the street improvement at Anderson from Barton Road to Mount Street from Anderson all the way to Shepperson, and Mile from Anderson to Shepperson, so we are this loop. We're also going to do the wall line replacement along the street right here, and after we replace the wall line, then we'll pave the street in this neighborhood east of Anderson and to Poplar Street and north of Lawton, South Barton Road, all this neighborhood. We're also going to replace the wall line up Lawton from Campus Street all the way up to the end. Right now, there's a current 6-inch wall line that's been leaking, and we'll replace that pipe with an 8-inch, and then we're going to grind and pave the street. So that would take care of all this pavement rehabilitation. Oh, one more. We're going to continue paving Barton Road from Benton Street to Mountain View, and Benton Street from Lawton to Barton Road. We're also going to do a survey seal on Redlands Boulevard from Anderson all the way to California. So that's planned for next fiscal year. And none of this project are funded by general fund.
What about the center median plan there in Redlands Boulevard?
No, we don't do that. We decide not to do that. Two things. First, due to comment from Councilman Daly, every time we have median, we have weed growing in the median, we can't maintain it. And I agree with him, we've been cutting and we can't maintain it. And then the street sweeping, they don't do a very good job at sweep the street at the median. And also, I talked to the business owner along the south side. They prefer to keep that left turn pocket, and so we decided not to do it. So we use that money instead of median, do the pavement rehabilitation.
Okay.
Okay? Yes, sir.
Can you explain why the street improvement plan looks like it's heavy on the south side of town and not so much on the north?
Thank you. The reason for that is we have been in the past, we already paved every street in North Central neighborhood. We already paved a lot of street in the north side of Barton Road. The only bad part right now is south of Barton Road. Where's Jeff? Jeff already left. If you drive down in this subdivision, east of Anderson, west of Poplar Street, the pavement is in very bad condition. So instead of just going and pave the street, we decided to go in and replace the pipeline first because it's old and it's been leaking. We decided to do both at the same time.
So how long does it take to pave the entire town or resurface the streets of the entire town?
I have been here 19 years. I paved every street in town at least once, majority of twice.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it's about a 7 to 10 year cycle.
Yes, every 7 years we do a service seal. And except on Barton Road, this is the second time that we do Barton Road with grind overlay because there's more traffic, and we've done that 10 years, every 10 years. So.
And we don't charge your trash collection to do it?
No. All of this money come from either gas tax, half-cent sale tax, or the remaining bond money from the RDA. So we're going to spend that. So for the water line, for next year, as I mentioned earlier, we just have this 1, 2, 3, 4 street left to do, which is the Tulip, Richardson, I can't remember the street, but this one here and Lawton to go up the hill. And we'll complete that. And this slide I want to show you is this past 19 years. This is all the water line that we replace in town. And pretty much anything over than 50 years old we have replaced, almost all of them. And that's include the reservoir. We recode them. The wells, we put in all the new wells along the north side of the freeway, even though the well is in the city of San Bernardino, but that's where the water table is. So we've been doing a good job at replacing the water line and do a pavement rehabilitation.
I like to do this plug every time you talk about this, and it's important for people to know that our city's been very forward-thinking. So when they do a lot of this this pipe replacement, they're also putting in things like fiber optic cable and stuff like that.
Yes.
Which has really made this place a IT powerhouse, and you wouldn't think so, but it really is pretty phenomenal, the things that they've done. So
I just want to let you know that this fiscal year, we are almost done. This year, we put in the fiber optic connecting from our trunk line on baseline, on Redlands Boulevard, up Richardson to this well site. We also did put in the fiber optic across the railroad track and the flood control channel when the SBCTA put in the new water main and put in the new track. So we did put in the fiber optic. And we also put in the fiber optic in Cooley Street and tied to all our well site. Currently, we use the radio to do the communication between the wells and to the reservoir. But now we're gonna have fiber optic from all those well site come back to the city hall and go up to the reservoir. But we're gonna keep the existing system as a backup plan. We're also working with IVDA. Right now, they're working on widening Mountain View and also replacing the bridge at the flood control channel over here. So we asked them to put in a conduit for us, for the fiber optic. So if the goal is to create a loop from Richardson, go up to Cooley, Mountain View, and tie to the conduit that we already have underneath the freeway. We did that when Ucaipa Valley Water District put in the Bryan line to go into the Edison power plant. So the conduits are there. So now we're going to have a loop system of our fiber optic up Mountain View all the way to Cooley, come back down Richardson. Eventually, the goal is to go all the way to Norton Air Force Base. When IVDA put in that bridge crossing Santa Ana River, we asked them to put in conduit for us. So we're almost there. So that's pretty much in my 5-year CIP. Any question?
So talking about forward thinking, what kind of pavement are we using for repaving our streets?
Yes. If it's just residential street that's in good shape, we do a survey seal, which is just sand and oil to seal all the crack to prevent the water from going to the pavement. But if after 10 or 15 years, we will grind the street about 2 to 2 inches and then remove the existing pavement and replace the rubberized asphalt. Rubberized asphalt is darker, quieter when you drive on it, and lasts longer.
Have we ever used permeable?
No, and the reason for that is the problem with having water go underground is contaminated or destroy the base material underneath, and it's bad for street.
Plus, the lower levels of asphalt are not permeable, so what good does it do to put 2 inches of permeable and then have impermeable?
Yes. So that's in my 5-year CIP. Thank you. Is there anything else? Yep, that's it.
So we move on to Council Bill R-2020-21, approving the adjusted appropriations limit. And I'm assuming we're going to just do a presentation on this and again hold this till the end. Is that the idea? Okay.
Well, the adjusted appropriations is an annual calculation, and it's basically, it sets a limit of what we can appropriate based upon our taxing dollars. And so we do an annual calculation to see if what items are subject to those appropriation limits. Currently, we have are adjusting our appropriation limits to 52 million. So if we look at the budget we are adopting, for total city, we are adopting a $46 million budget. So we are well within the limits of the appropriation, but not all of this 46 million that we are currently adopted are subject to these appropriation limits. So we annually state that we are well within our appropriation limits. So and the factors that go into adjusting this are based upon cost increase, cost of living increase, and population increase.
Any questions? All right, Deanna, you want to talk about our investment policy?
We are not making any changes to the investment policy, so we are just readopting our existing investment policy at this time. And then the COPS, the next item is the COPS grant expenditure plan. So this is a procedure that we need to just follow as far as the requirements for the COPS grant that we presented and show it, adopt it separately. And that's a county requirement, which is where the funding comes through the county. So we then submit it to them.
And Schedule A. Jarb, you want to present this, or?
This is the contract that we'll have for, with the county sheriff for next year. So it was part of at the budget workshop I presented to you, and it showed number of lieutenant, number of sergeant, detective, deputy that we have in the city, so.
So we, just to clarify, we share cost that apportions, right? With the city of Grand Terrace and with the county station, and so we have percentages of some of those positions.
Correct. For a lieutenant, we only have .55 of the lieutenant, 2.35 of the sergeant, .56 of detective. So that's why, as a small city, it's hard for us to have our own police department, because every time we require 1 or 2 lieutenant, or it's a backup and so forth.
And then I know.
Right now, we only need half of him, Al, so.
So we have to share some supervisory costs and things like that with the entire operation. Is that how that works?
Yes.
And then my wife was asking me a question about the cost, overall cost of our deputies, and she was actually asking why the costs seem kind of high to her. And so I was explaining to her how we don't pay for a single position, we pay hourly, correct? So we pay for a 24-hour position, or whatever that is, meaning if that person calls in sick or goes on vacation, the county pays a backfill. Whereas if we paid the standard rate that they do at some other stations, it's a lower rate, but you have to provide your own backfill. Is that correct? And I do know that in the last couple of years, Mayor Rigsby and a couple of you guys did tour some other places and looked at some other options about potentially doing what the sheriff calls a standalone station, and whether or not we were at that magic sweet spot with, we would be able to convert what we're paying hourly into actual positions and maybe stand up our own. And then there was still some potential ongoing discussion with some of that stuff, correct? Yes. Okay. My only comment is to stay on top of that. Obviously, we have to make sure we're getting the best for our dollars, and you know, making sure that we keep watching how that works. Any other questions on that?
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
To me, the biggest reason to go with the county for police services is liability, because I just can't imagine taking on the liability that would come from a single incident of police brutality, or whatever you want to call it, that might be alleged. And I don't even know how an individual city would get an insurance policy for that. I certainly wouldn't insure a city. I'd expect very high rates, and I just can't imagine that we can replicate what they do for the price that they bear and that they can provide it. And as far as going with other cities, you know, when you think about Redlands, I don't know if you could buy traditional police services from Redlands, because Redlands is kind of a community policing city, which is a different approach. Isn't that correct? You know, they've got a very high percentage of their sworn officers prior to recent massive cuts that were, you know, for want of a better term, social workers in blue.
You know, I don't know. I would probably have to defer to some other folks in the room about how they do business, but that is where a lot of overhead does occur with a local police department. In a way, we spend a lot of our services primarily on patrol response, sworn officer response to calls for service, and then we pay for civilian employees that do some of the more community aspects, you know, citizen on patrol and neighborhood watch and all that kind of stuff. So we're spending less probably, and I'm sure we could compare all that, and we probably should, just to make sure we're doing the right thing. But yes, they do use sworn officers for more of that. You see that actually in, let me get off on a tangent. It's very hard, and this is what's challenging as we look at the dynamic in the country right now, is that the United States is set up for police services to basically be local. And And so what one community does is not necessarily what the next door neighbor does. And we've always cherished that as a country. And so we're kind of seeing maybe there's going to be a change, and I'm not sure what that's going to look like. But each community can really kind of decide what they want and what they espouse. So, and not to disparage the city of Los Angeles, but the city of Los Angeles, they man their stations with full-time police officers. They're at the front counter. So when you go to a police station, you can talk to a police officer. Out here, most agencies, I don't know of any agencies that would do anything like that. Sworn police officers are a commodity that are out in the field and on patrol, and so they staff out here with civilians and things like that. It's just different. It's different everywhere. So, you know, we have to look at what our community wants and what we're trying to attain, and try to figure out how to do that the most cost-effective way. And knock on wood, we haven't had any of those situations that would potentially cost us money. But you're absolutely right. The advantage is with the county is the county absorbs all of that liability potentially, and takes that away from us. So I don't know, at some point when the county starts figuring that out, maybe they get out of the business also, because that becomes too cost prohibitive for them to even offer it. I don't know. So.
I'll just make one additional comment on the Budget Committee recommendations, because I know these are veterans that invest a lot of time and energy into our budget, so I think we need to look carefully at what they recommend. As I said, the first 4 recommendations I don't have any real issue with. The police services, I think that needs a longer examination. We're not talking 2021 budget in terms of what they're recommending. And as far as reducing city council compensation, I mean, I've said as long as I've been here, you don't do this for the money. So that's not a big deal to me. It's not going to have any budgetary impact, but if it would be a useful negotiating tool in terms of setting an example, I've got no issue with that one either. So with those comments, unless there's anyone else, I'm prepared to go ahead and move them. Okay.
Extended annual services contracts, we have from 1 to 8. The first one is Gulf Patrol, the second one Golden West Landscaping, Loma Linda Heating and Air Condition, St. Francis Electric that maintain our traffic signal, janitory services, Adopted Highway, that's people that pick up trash and pull weeds on the freeway, Wildan Financial Services, they're the one who do the landscape maintenance district and street light assessment district report for us, and then the facility protection system that want to do the fire alarm system for the city and monitoring. So those are the annual contract that I would like the council to approve.
Real quick, I want to back up to our other discussion about our law enforcement services, and I want to be real careful because it's all very kind of just discussion, but there are some things that we're working on too as a city related to our Area D development. And again, this is stuff that's years down the road, and it's important for us to look at. But we're looking at some ways to potentially maximize some law enforcement opportunities, leveraging some of the space and the land that we have potentially. And so those are discussions that are still going on. They've been going on for a couple of years now. Dr. Rigsby and I sit on the Public Safety Subcommittee, and so we even met with the county about a little over a year ago to talk with the CEO about some possibilities. So those are things that are continually discussed, and when something, if something comes to fruition, we will bring it forward. But we're always looking to maximize what we can get out of the county. I say that kind of vaguely, but that's some stuff that's going on. So
good, that's helpful.
Okay, our wildland fire protection contract.
Again, this is a routine agreement that we have with CAL FIRE. When we have a fire up in the South Hill or nearby, they will come in and assist us.
Does this also include how we provide services elsewhere too, or no?
No, this is simply for them.
Just for them?
Item J is for the city council to approve the Council Bill R 2020-23 to adopt the budget, and then K is Loma Linda Housing, LLHA Bill R 2020-02.
So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bills in this group, is that correct? Do we need to take those separately? What is the legal recommendation?
Excuse me, I'm muted. I think you can do those as a whole. You might want to indicate, previously you had abstained on the sheriff's contract portion.
Yes, so maybe we'd take that one out.
But otherwise, you can take all the items together since they're related, as long as the motion is specifically to include each of those.
So
Department's
that-
been doing a great job of listing those heretofore.
So we will pull item G, and I'm not sure if that's an item that requires a motion, or if that's just an item, an informational item, way it's presented on the agenda.
I think that was approving the schedule.
It doesn't.
Yes, it was approved as Schedule A.
Doesn't say approve on there, but just lists it.
Yes, it require approval.
Okay, so let's take that one out and table that for a minute, and then I'll entertain a motion to handle those other 5 council bills minus item G.
Can we just do them separately?
Well, the reason we're doing them together is because of the roll call vote, and they are all tied. If anybody wanted to pull one and have it considered separately for a particular reason, you can do that, but you can also do them together if you choose.
Did you want to pull one, Baba?
Okay, I move to approve R-2020-21, R-2020-22, and then R-2020-02. So we have 2 pulled, which is G and J.
So I'm not sure, well, I guess we can pull that, but we are meeting jointly as the Housing Authority and the City Council, so should we separate those 2 out? You want to just approve the Housing Authority budget separately?
No, he pulled
He
the
pulled K.
budget.
I put J and.
J, the budget.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm saying he wants to approve the Housing Authority separate from the city budget.
I don't think so. Did you say you wanted the housing budget separate, or do you want the
I think he
city
was
budget separate?
Pulling the
The
council
city
bill.
budget is going to be
Yeah,
separate,
yeah.
and as well as item G.
Yeah. So he's not separating the housing authority. So it sounds like, but we also need a motion for the rest of the items. So I think I would propose a substitute motion that we approve the entire item 13 with the exceptions of items G and J.
That's the same thing I motioned.
Yeah. But there are a lot of items in between. Yeah,
You were just.
I second that motion.
Okay.
yeah.
So we have first and a second. Madam Clerk? These will be for everything excluding J and G.
Yeah, okay, the motion is to approve, to accept the presentation, receive the Budget Committee recommendations: approve the 5-year capital improvement program, approve Council Bill R-2020-21, approving the 2021 adjusted appropriations limit, accepting the investment policy, the COPS expenditure grant. We are pulling Schedule A to vote separately, the extension of all of the listed service contracts, approving Council Bill R-2020-22, approving the wildland fire protection contract between the California Department of Forestry and CAL FIRE and the city for the fiscal year 2021, approving Council Bill R-2020-23, adopting the 2020-21 fiscal year budget, and Loma Linda Housing Authority Bill R-2020-02, adopting the 2020-21 fiscal year budget.
I think that
You
Councilman
said J.
Jindal was pulling J out.
You're pulling J.
Or we're pulling item J?
Pulling
Okay,
J out
we are
for
not-
further discussion.
Okay, I'll amend that to, we are not approving with this motion Council Bill R-2020-23, that is adopting the fiscal year budget. It includes everything else. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard?
Good job.
Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Per Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to move item G.
Second.
And Ron, if you want to handle that, I'll just completely abstain. and you
Oh,
can move.
okay. Okay, so we have a motion to approve Schedule A pertaining to the contract with the Sheriff's Department. It's been moved and seconded. So Madam Clerk, if you'd run us through the enrollment here.
Thank you. And the motion is to approve the Schedule A pertaining to the contract with the Sheriff's Department. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Per Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
I abstain.
And it passes. Thank you.
And just an aside comment. Well, I'll talk with you after council. You, Phil.
Okay, that brings us to item J. We have some further discussion.
So two things with item J. First of all, I would have an amendment in it to make sure that the council salary is reduced by whatever the average salary is for, average reduction in salary is for all other employees. And then second, I think I'm still a little confused regarding salary negotiations. They don't seem to be finished. And if they're not finished, I'm not sure if we're able to approve the budget.
So as far as salary negotiations, what will happen is, if you approve the budget tonight, should there be any changes during the negotiation process, we'll come back with a budget amendment for you to approve on a follow-up session. So this, like I said, this gives us an idea whether or not you were willing to look at a deficit and whether or not we were looking at layoffs and furloughs or being able to structure something with a deficit. And your vote is going to give us that direction very clearly, and then we can engage with the labor groups appropriately. And should we need to come back for additional, any additional monies related to that, then we will come back and address that as a separate amendment to the budget.
Right, so it seems the deficit is pretty much unavoidable. My question before, which we can't talk about right now, is basically how much we're seeing an increase of. So my concern is if we don't know what the increase is, that this budget isn't finalized,
I think a budget is fluid, and I think we can approve the budget as we see it tonight, and then any changes that come up, the city brings it back to us, and that's exactly what we do at mid-year budget.
We do that mid-year, we do it routinely throughout the year when we ask for additional funding for different projects. You'll see that come forward as different projects come through or different changes, because realistically, we're making a budget that's we're supposed to be able to project 18 months into the future, and nobody's that good. Not even Warren Buffett can pull that one off. So it's something that's malleable, as the mayor said, and as those changes happen, we come to you and we'll look for changes, and we know this is a change that we're going to have to address or not. We may be able to stay inside the cap that we have.
Dr. Rigsby?
Yeah, just an illustration of that. Let's say our labor negotiations go poorly on our side and go very well on their side, and we can't afford this budget, and then we abandon all pretense of normality and start laying people off, to meet our budget needs. That can always happen, so you can't necessarily sit around and wait until everything's tied in a bow before you set a budget. So the budget, given the projections that we have before us today, I think is a reasonable budget. And I think if things change and, negotiations don't go as well as we think they will, then we have to change it in the future. But I support the budget as it is now.
Got it. So my last question would be, we will still be continuing in good faith negotiations if the current budget gets passed?
Oh, definitely. And some of the representatives out here, they know me well. They know where I live. Right?
Whoa. Now they're going to tell them where you live.
Wow.
All right, so having said that, I move to approve Council Bill R-2020-23 with the amendment that the City Council salary be reduced by the average of what all the other, go ahead.
Can I request on the city council salary, can I request that we bring it back? Because
What he's indicating is if we have to actually cut salaries and do reductions, at that point, that would trigger.
That would have to come back here anyway.
Yeah, well, it would have to come back here, yes.
So I think what we're saying is that we don't know that there's going to be cuts or layoffs or anything like that. And that if those eventualities occur, then that's the time that it would be, because it wouldn't be enough. I can't support saying, let's just make cuts when we don't know what's going to happen with the other negotiations.
Sure, so we can do it without, but it would be the same thing, because if there are no cuts, then the salary wouldn't be cut. But if we want to revisit this in the future,
Which we would have to anyway.
We have to approve all final negotiations anyway, they have to come to us, so I think we're safe. And the reason I brought that up earlier is I wanted to make sure that we were continuing to do what we needed to do to get to the right decision, and this is a separate process than the negotiations.
We're fortunate and blessed as a city that we have the workforce that we do.
I agree. And it's a lean workforce for the jobs that we.
Workforce, in every negotiations, there are requests. There's nothing outrageous on the table. There's reasonable requests. There's some arm wrestling that goes on, and then we come to you with the final piece. And that's the process we're working through right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if we have, let's say, God forbid, 20% layoffs citywide, which one of you is going to resign? Got to match it.
I'm the longest serving, that would be one way. Or the oldest, that would be another way.
all right, so scratch that. Then I move to approve Council Bill R-2020-23.
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. Madam Clerk?
Okay, the motion is to adopt Council Bill number R-2020-23, adopting the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rixby?
Yes.
Mayor Per Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
Thank you, it passes unanimously.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 14, talking about our status as a city in response to the coronavirus and discussion and possible action with measures to further respond, including measures to prevent transmission of the virus while encouraging responsible steps to reopen businesses. I'm not sure if Councilman Jindal is going to present this, or?
Yeah, so this stemmed from a question one of our residents had. So they work at a local business, and they fear that they're not adequately protected at the business. They're not provided adequate PPE, and there's no limit on how many people can enter their business at one time. So they are worried that they are exposed more than necessary. So my question is, there are other cities have passed similar legislation or similar bills saying that businesses have to limit how many people enter the business by X%, that they have to provide PPE. Are we able to do that here in order to ensure that we're making sure that all employees in this city are protected?
What we have followed citywide is the county health department recommendations. I believe cities that have varied from their county health department have their own city health departments, Long Beach, Pasadena, Los Angeles. But they have city health departments, not as well as the county health department. So we certainly do not have, although sitting at the podium, we have the medical expertise, but we don't have the medical expertise on the staff to define that, where there is at the county a public health officer, public people that are skilled and trained in public health, who come up with the requirements and the criteria. There's also a reporting mechanism through the county, and I'll see you after if you want, and it's in your, I think I put it in at least weekly on the daily reports on how to look up the county information and the store opening information requirements and how to report concerns to the county health department, who then does the investigation and follow-up.
So, real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you guys sit on some of those meetings that I do, and again, for the medical folks. The county has lifted most of their health, or all of their health orders, and they have recommendations, and they've shifted to an incentive program. And the incentive program actually offers businesses like a $2,500 incentive or something to comply with recommendations. And so their goal was to get voluntary compliance. And I haven't kept up on all the details, but I believe businesses could take advantage of that, where they get the relief money if they're compliant with a list of criteria. Is that?
There's a $2,500 grant available to COVID compliant businesses through the county. We've sent that information out twice to every business that we can through the Chamber of Commerce that we have email contact for. And we're going to follow up one more time. We just sent updated information today that will get sent out in the next day or so. So that those businesses that are struggling and just trying to get those last pieces in place can be compliant. And yes, the county has lifted all of their orders except for orders relating to congregate care of nursing home facilities, and are following state guidelines and following the state opening recommendations. And that was I think I put that in Monday's report for all the businesses, the requirements for that. And once again, if there are concerns, they can be reported to the county health department, who have the skilled people who know what they're looking at. If we do it ourselves, I'm literally going to send our code enforcement guy, who's the full-time dog catcher, to go figure out what proper PPEs and COVID compliance is. And frankly, we're just not trained in knowledgeable in that.
So do we have in the city right now a limit of how many people can be inside a business, like at 50% capacity, 70%?
Just based on state guidelines.
It's state guidelines. We do not have city limits or any city requirements.
Got it. In the reports, I haven't seen, Have we caught anyone not following the guidelines? Have we done any enforcement?
We have not had any complaints directly to the city. I know that there was one for a business that the county received a complaint. They came and addressed the business, and they corrected it. It wasn't anything done purposefully. It was done out of innocent ignorance. And the owner was more than happy to correct what they were doing. Our business is just dealing with the handful of businesses that I deal with in town. I've seen them chase people out of Stater Brothers without masks. There's a lot of stores that smell what you're in without masks and without the compliance issues. And once again, the county health department is the place that can really do that enforcement is geared for.
Interesting, I was just going to say something, I guess now is the time good as any, with what happened in San Bernardino with the actions that happened last Sunday night, several grocery stores, Walmarts, the Target were looted. And so I would expect, I know I've personally seen an influx in people coming into town to do their grocery shopping because they have to go to a grocery store and we're the closest. So, but I have seen, for the most part, compliance. The stores are monitoring and they're asking people to leave. I haven't seen any issues or anything like that, but just so people, if they see like an increase, it could be related to what's happened in some of the other communities. And so folks need to buy food and they're looking for the closest place. So, and I've also heard generally there's a lot of folks that like to shop here anyway because they feel safer. So. Good? Yep. Cool. All right, well, moving along to reports of council members. And I'll just make the plug again. I've been talking to Jarb about it. Like I said, this is my wife's deal. It has nothing to do with, well, yeah, it's something to do with me because I'm part of it, but she's the most important part of it. And the idea of, we've seen a lot of people in the community that go out on their own and go out and pick up trash and work their neighborhoods and do different things, and we kind of thought that'd be a great way to show that we can all give back. So we are working in coordination with the city manager on that, and we're looking at planning for Sunday morning at about 9 o'clock, but we'll put out something more.
I will request that there's a form that the volunteer have to fill out for just liability.
To absolve the city in case you get hit by a truck.
Right, you're not gonna turn around in the sewers. Right. So. And please do not go pick up trash on Barton Road median. The cars go too fast.
Well, I thought you were going to be out there with your car to block traffic for us.
No, I been there, done that. No.
I just like to say that I've had a couple of opportunities last week to do business with some local establishments, and one was through a kind of a poor choice I made driving my car, and I had to get a tire fixed. And I went to our local Loma Tire, and they were really good and super responsive, did it real quick. And another one, a poor choice that somebody else in my family made, and I won't say who that was, led me to go to the Bottle Body Shop, Seidner's. And they're very, very good. And I just want everybody to remember we have a lot of good businesses in town. And our first thought is, oh, I got to go to somewhere here, there, and everywhere. But we got some really good businesses in town. So anybody that's listening, I just encourage them, look first to our local people before you head off to some other town.
Very good point. Okay. Any reports of officers?
Yes, in the past, we usually ask the department head to give us, the city council, a highlight of what they have accomplished this current fiscal year. But we usually do that at the workshop, but we didn't do that at the workshop last month. So I would like each department to give a short presentation to the city council of what they have accomplished this current year. Start out with the city clerk, Barbara.
Thank you. This past year, we can start with, we had the election on March 3rd. 3 seats were up for re-election. We had incumbents, Councilman Lenart and Councilman Rigsby re-elected, and we welcome our new city council member, Mr. Jindal. While Continuing with our agendas and meetings and minutes and ordinances and resolutions and all that goes along with that for our City Council, Housing Authority, and Successor Agency, we've navigated through and continuing to navigate through the meeting process with Zoom and, limited in person. And we thank our information systems analyst, Kyle McGavin, for kind of spearheading that and taking that on and getting us through all of that. As far as public records requests and subpoenas, last fiscal year we had 114 total public records requests. To date this year, we've had 142, which is a 40% increase over the same period last fiscal year. Approximately 2 subpoenas to date in 2020. We had approximately 4 of them last year. I do want to recognize and thank our administrative specialist too, Natalie Alvazar. She's with our Community Development Department, our Fire Department Executive Aide, Julia Lofert, Engineering Technician, Henry Reed, and then Tom Ingles and Matt Dingman in our Fire Prevention Bureau for their assistance. A lot of the requests are for documents and lists from them, and also Martha Wyberry with our Finance Department. We get monthly requests for new business licenses from the previous month and those types of things. So I want to, kind of shout out to them and thanking them for all their help. And then as far as the city clerk's office, just continuing with the other regular duties of the office, claims, FPPC filings, insurance, document recordings, bid openings, document management, retention, website maintenance. With the Housing Authority, we continue to manage the 16 down payment assistance loans and 27 mortgage loans for the low-income single-family homes. It includes generating, printing, mailing out monthly statements, collecting and receiving payments, responding to requests of interest in the housing programs, and working with our consultant and attorney regarding various questions from homeowners regarding possible sales, refinance, et cetera, and then making sure we comply with the state reporting requirements. In human resources, continue to provide some oversight and supervision in human resources. We hired a new HR risk management analyst back in November, Liz Montez. I did these slides prior to this afternoon. Bad news, she's submitted her resignation and is moving on to a position in the private sector, so we're going to be looking to recruit for that position again. We had some restructuring in the Fire Prevention Bureau with revisions to the fire marshal job description, and that resulted in 2 promotions within the Bureau, Tom Ingles to Fire Marshal and Matt Dingman to Fire Prevention Inspector. We also had some resignations. That resulted over the last fiscal year in about 7 new hires throughout the city. Benjamin Nielsen with our Fire Department, Megan Shea, Vicky Roscoe with our Finance Department, Michael Garcia and Paul Herrera with our Public Works Department, Nidia Torres and Angela Rubalcava here at City Hall, and then 2 new student interns in our Engineering Department. For 2020, 2021, want to continue to look to automate our document management system, which will help with fulfilling some of the public records requests a little bit quicker and easier, and the electronic document recording with the County Recorder's Office, and just continuing to provide quality customer service to our council employees and our citizens. I'm just want to thank you for the opportunity to serve the city for the last 33 and a half years. Thank you.
Next is Conrad.
Thank you for the opportunity to brag a little bit and show off what a great job that our staff does. So the Community Development Department, we have a staff of 1 crack planner and 2 clerical support people. In the last year, I think you've seen a bunch of these. If you haven't, they'll be coming through shortly. The Eye Care Center on Redlands Boulevard, a 7,000 square foot storage building attached to Loma Broadcasting. We just cleared planning commission with 57 residential condominium units. They'll be right behind the VA building. You'll be seeing those shortly. And 213 senior living apartments on the extension of Park Avenue. This is the group that is doing the Circa 2020 on Lagonia. We've also done the arrival sequence and the sign programs, worked with the 244 single-family residential houses, parks and development of that project, and are working on the completion of the 95 lots for KB Homes. In addition, we're working on a general code amendment. Historically, what we've done is just make changes, spot changes to the code. We're going back through and cleaning up all the inconsistencies, bringing that pieces of it haven't been touched since the city was formed, and bringing that into kind of a modern form, and then beginning the work on a general plan and housing element for the next year or two. Reworking our zoning. Those of you that don't know, Olive Redlands Boulevard has a different zoning than the rest of the city, so we're bringing all that area back into city compliance. We've got 2 fairly large grants that will help us be doing that, as well as coming up with an ordinance for accessory dwelling units and how to handle additional requirements for housing. On top of that, we've processed about 200 planning permits and special events permits in that group. That's a busy couple of people. Building department, they've issued 153 building permits, 8 accessory dwelling units, 195 solar permits. So basically, they're doing about 3 permits a day. And then just for that's big stuff, and then walls, fences, porch covers, and everything else, they did another 684 of them. So they're doing about 5 permits a day, and then, of course, 12 inspections a day. Our building inspector is contract and works part-time here to do all of that. Code enforcement, our licenses have really slowed down. We have not been enforcing the licensing during the COVID times. It just didn't make sense. What we have done is repurposed him for meal deliveries to the seniors rather than be out doing code stuff. Over the year, we had 46 animals impounded, about 1 a week. Our goal is not to issue citations or write tickets. Our goal is to get compliance. So we work with people to find that compliance. Basically, we do 1 code citation about every 3.5 weeks, and 1 animal citation, basically for an animal at large, about once every 2 weeks. So we're not a ticket writing community, and it's certainly not a revenue stream for us. Our IT staff, they're back there, both of them, over the course of the year, have migrated all of our emails. Mr. Mayor, you understand what the complexity of that is. The entire city email from Exchange to Office 365, upgraded the security cameras and installed new cameras at the 5 city parks, as well as upgraded the servers and storage here at City Hall that work on the back end of that. Have added hardware. Jarb spoke earlier about the fiber optic that is nearing the end of construction for the well sites. So we've also added all the servers and hardware to provide that. And then the same thing, we've reestablished connection to every traffic signal in the city via our fiber optic networks to synchronize all the traffic. Also, we've brought the Loma Linda Fire Department from Confire, who was providing all their email and IT support in-house, so that a transition's taken a few months to bring essentially about 1/3 of the city's workforce back in with all the support that takes. We've gradually rolled out upgrades throughout the Connected Community program, so we're able to provide gig connections to every house in the city now. And the back end of this piece, we've upgraded our firewall and network security so that we've got a more robust security system, both on the wireless and the connected portion. And that is it. Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
The additional 95 KB homes, are those on the east side of New Jersey?
Yes.
Yeah,
They're on the east side of New Jersey. The west side, they're still having some challenges with flood control issues.
With what?
Flood control.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think they got in deeper than what they expected.
Remember they asked us to waive some,
Yeah, I remember the discussion.
Yeah, so they've got some challenges on that side. That may or may not ever come to completion. Because they would have to build some fairly extensive flood control channels, bridges.
For the west side,
For the east side.
for the east side.
The west side, most of that is out of the flood control channel. There's a few right around that oak tree
Yeah.
that will probably remain vacant unless they can figure out some way to channelize that little creek. Basically, everything from downtown Redlands goes through that creek, and they'll need to do a lot of work upstream and downstream to get that into compliance.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diana?
This is just, we broke it down by our operational functions. So this is our utility department. We do monthly billings on average. We do about 2,800. We send out about average 1,100 courtesy notices. And we were averaging for delinquent notices about 280, and door hangers 70, shut-off notices 11. You'll see the asterisk, which notes that we have not sent out any of these since February, and there's two reasons for that. First, we adopted SB 998, which limited our abilities to shut off for financial reasons, and then with the declaration by the governor for to extend, to not shut off anybody during the COVID crisis. We've also processed 2,200 meter changeouts to hopefully move over to our new meter reading, and then hopefully to be automated with when we implement our new software. Business license, we do both billings for inside and outside. So we send out inside about 647 renewals. We did close out about 130 accounts, and we processed 39 new accounts for the inside businesses. Outside, we did about 1,100 renewals. There were 218 closed out accounts, and then we processed 52 new business license. Accounting, we do accounts receivable, which includes doing invoices for contractual services that we provide for Loma Linda Fire, the Medical Center Fire, the VA, the law enforcement, the library, cell tower, facility leases, and developer services. We do accounts payable, which is all the payments to the vendors for all our purchases and contractual services, and our debt service. So we do about 34 runs throughout the year for those. It's about 26 million in payments that we send out via these processes. And then we have payroll. We have 26 pay periods, and we also process all the benefit payments for those payroll runs. Annual reportings, which we come to you for, most of them. Well, we do our budget, we have our mid-year budget, we do the annual audit, we have the auditors out here twice a year to do the interim and then the year end. We have annual reports that we file with the state. It's called the state controller, and then the street report, which are based upon funding that we receive. Then we have granting agency reports. We do a Measure I report. We file reports with AQMD, and then depending on if we receive any federal or state grantings in a particular year, we'll file those reports as well. We have annual filings. We do, for all the bond issues, we have to do continuing disclosure reporting, and we do the actuarial and OPEB filing with CalPERS for the post-employment benefits. We do our fuel tax, our use tax, the possessory interest, the county MOE, which we receive public safety funding for, so we have to do this maintenance of effort reporting, and then we file our unclaimed property reports. And these are just quarterly and monthly and daily activities. So we file quarterly fuel taxes. We process development incentive payments for sales tax and TOT incentives. We do the monthly closing. We do about 30 entries per month. And then we do more at year end. So June is our year end, so we'll be processing more. We do a bank reconciliation for all our accounts. We have the main account, we have housing, successor agency account, and a payroll accounts. And then we do just daily, we do our banking activity, we do cash flow projections to make sure we have enough cash to meet our current obligations, and we process payroll, purchase orders, and then we process the incoming and outgoing mail. And then right now, our major project that we are currently working on is we are implementing our new financial software. So currently, we're working with the vendors to do the core financial, which is our general ledger, our accounts payable, our purchase orders, our accounts receivable, the cashiering and budgeting portion. We'll be working on data conversion here, and we anticipate going live. Actually, that's changed to September. So we're anticipating going live on the financial core in September. And then we're going to be moving into the implementation of the utility billing and business license modules for the software.
Good evening. I didn't go into a lot of what we've been obviously dealing with lately in the fire service. And we all kind of know about that the last several months. You know, we've been very COVID focused, and the guys have been doing a fantastic job in dealing with all that and adjusting to kind of a new way of responding to calls and dealing with patients and stuff. And so kind of left that as a foregone conclusion that they've been handling a lot. But the first two are technically things that happened last fiscal, but they really kind of started affecting the department this last year, and that was we moved away from the East Valley fire model back into strictly focused on the Loma Linda Fire Department, and have made a lot of changes in the department with that, and obviously hired a new fire chief to get to deal with all that. Tom Ingalls, who was our fire inspector, got promoted to fire marshal this year and is doing actually a fantastic job. He's really motivated and has been bringing a lot of new ideas to the position. That opened his previous position, and we hired Matt Dingman as our new fire prevention inspector. We began work on a 5-year strategic plan, which was just about finished, and then we got hit with the budget stuff, so we had to do some quick adjustments to it, and I think we'll be able to roll that out in the next week or so. And I think there's a lot of data that was put into that plan, and I think will set us up on a good direction over the next 5 years. We created a fire prevention intern program, which actually is where we got Matt from as our fire inspector. He was our first intern, who then when the opening came, he went through a testing process and was the best candidate. We're looking, as we begin moving out of the COVID and opening stuff back up, to be able to start getting more interns in here again. We've taken a large focus on new technologies for the fire service. Obviously, that's kind of the way of the future. And so I've kind of worked with the department members and our chief officers to grab hold of some technologies that are out there, such as Tablet Command, First Do, First Watch, which is actually 2 programs, Foam and First Pass. We're having an Esri dashboard established, and Brycer Compliant Engine is a product we use with fire prevention. We had hoped to be completed with the purchase of a new ladder truck this year, but as Jarbar explained, that's going to be moved into the fall due to the COVID process. We were
Does that create problems for the certification of the new hospital?
No, it should be fine still. Yeah.
Because they're behind.
Yeah, I think everything fell behind, so. Several years ago, just about every department in the area replaced their self-contained breathing apparatus, so the things our firefighters wear going into fires. Ours were so new that we couldn't be part of that grant, and so ours was a different brand than everybody around us. Those finally kind of came to the point where they needed replacing, and so we made a decision to replace all of those, and now we're consistent with all the departments around us. And lastly, we adopted a new personal management program now that we've made our transition from Confer IT to Loma Linda, that will go into effect, which will be a program that monthly works with our personnel through updates and check-ins, and then it'll be used as an annual evaluation process. Any questions on any of that?
Yeah, when I first got on the council in 2010, I did a ride-along with the fire department, and I remember how much stuff we were just reconditioning. And you had guys with, bring in welding equipment and redo things, and, and hodgepodge of the SCBAs, and it was very impressive back then how much we did with less here.
Yeah.
And very impressed with how our guys don't complain. They come to work and they just make it happen. So.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, they do a lot of that. You can go over by the fire station right now and see a roof prop that the guys use to practice ventilation that was built by our guys. They still do a lot of the stuff around the station. Obviously, we're doing a little better of helping them out and purchasing stuff that really should be purchased and not, welded and built on and stuff, but they're still more than willing to help out as needed, so we really appreciate that.
And they organized the Loma Linda Strong campaign also.
Yes, very good program. So if you haven't got your t-shirts, see Julie, you can get a t-shirt. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Public Works. So I want to go over what project we have completed this fiscal year. The top one is we widened the I-10 and Mountain View on and off ramp. It should be wrapping up the end of this month. There's some challenge dealing with the Caltrans. The Candlewood Hotel and Eye Surgical Institute, a little delay due to the COVID-19, but I think they will start back up. Heritage Park, we did the parking lot and improvement to the house out there. We did the sewer lining at the Jensen Mobile Home Park. We did the wall line improvement on Mountain Views Avenue. We did all the improvement plan check and inspection for the Citrus Trail and Citrus Lane, KB Home, the car wash. The medical office is now start construction. The street improvement, pavement rehabilitation on Shepperson, Taylor.
You got to take the roundabout off of there.
Right, we started a roundabout, and we decided not to do the roundabout, but we did start it, we'll complete this week, on the sidewalk and retaining wall along the north side of the Anderson. And we should be wrapping up the storm drain at the end of San Juan and San Marcos. We installed a wall line up Anderson Way and the wall line on Richardson, Acacia, all this street, and then we paved the street. We work on the EOC expansion, and we plan to go out rebid in next week. And we have a plan ready to go for fire station improvement. And we did a lot of remove and replace sidewalk at various location, replace majority of the water meter, which should be done either this year or early next year. And tree planting at the city park, we plant 36 trees at the city park. For this coming fiscal year, again, a lot of same thing, similar projects, but we're gonna have a 57-unit condominium that was approved by the Planning Commission that will come to you soon. And the same thing with the 213-unit senior apartment that Conrad mentioned earlier. Next year, a big one will be installing a new 1 million gallon reservoir to increase our water storage capacity, more ADA ramps, tree planting, art in public place, walking trail at Bailey Park. So this year alone, we have completed a work on about 37 capital improvement projects with our staff. We have, right now, we have 3 student intern. They're all civil engineering students, 2 from Cal Poly Pomona, and 1 from Cal Baptist that helped me do a drafting for the city. Next could be the sheriff.
Hey, and kudos to you and your public works folks, Jarb. Yeah, I see your guys out everywhere. And I know they work very hard and take care of a lot of stuff for us, so thank you very much.
Introduce our new lieutenant, Al Daniel. So
0.55%, right?
that's it, that's all you can have.
I'm just kidding. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City Manager. First of all, on behalf of Sheriff McMahon and Captain Griffith, I want to thank you for your continued support for approving the Schedule A contract and your continued support of the department and moving forward with police services. One of the things the City Manager asked me to talk about was the statistics out of our annual report. Is it the arrow button? And so what we have here is a recap. It's a 5-year statistical recap from 2015 to 2019, and it shows the trend of crimes that were reported through the Uniform Crime Reports. One of the key components for 2019 is that there was a change in the reporting of those crimes, and criminal threat offenses were previously reported to the Department of Justice as Part 2 crimes. So when they report these crimes, there's Part 1 and there's Part 2. What you see in the gray box in the upper left-hand corner, those are all your Part 1 crimes. And then as you look across to the graph there, I would draw your attention to the where it says Part 1 total. And you see all the way to the right side there, it shows that there was a minus 8%. So there was a decrease in those Part 1 crimes, specifically for the city of Loma Linda. In your Part 2 crimes, there was a decrease by 1%. So that's actually good news. When we look down to the next box where it shows the aggravated assaults increase, that shows you a recap if we didn't have to report those as Part 1 crimes, and then the second box shows it being reported as the Part 1 crimes. And then below that is a graph that shows what that looks like. So you see kind of the going across the linear for the Part 2, and then the Part 1, just a slight drop. In 2019, our deputies, you have 16 deputies that are assigned to your city. They responded to 27,861 calls for service, in which 10,324 of those were proactive calls. 17,537 were dispatch calls for services, where they took a combined total of 2,352 reports. There were several key investigations that occurred throughout the year. One of them that was a notable one I'd like to talk about was there was a rash of residential burglaries that were occurring between March and October of 2019, and it involved approximately 20 residences in the city of Loma Linda. It was later determined that it was a group of suspects that were committing these crimes, and they were doing it in multiple cities throughout the Southern California area. Those suspects were eventually identified, apprehended, and are awaiting trial. Quality of life also is a concern of ours as a department, as well as for your city as well. And we do work with our HOPE team. So one of the benefits with the contract that we have is the access to our HOPE team. And in that course of 2019, we came across and contacted 68 transient individuals in the city. Out of those, 24 individuals were provided with assistance, and then 10 individuals who were veterans were referred to the Veterans Affairs Office for assistance and were helped there. We did relocate 2 families and arrange housing for them, and we did enforce trespass laws, and then ultimately vacating the orange groves at Mission Road and California Street. We also have adult protective services and a children family services deputy that assist in certain investigations that involve APS or CPS. And in 2019, 80 cases were investigated out of that as well. Traffic, we use our Office of Traffic Safety grant, and we use that to focus on enforcement of seatbelt usage, distracted driving, pedestrian right-of-way laws, and DUI laws. And in 2019, there was 10 reported DUI arrests, 158 traffic collisions were investigated with 1 fatality, and then 910 traffic citations were issued. Another component for the department that we rely on is our volunteers. And in 2019, our volunteers that comprised of reserve deputy sheriffs, citizens on patrol, and explorers, out of our central station total, donated 6,200 hours. And part of that benefits your city as well. So that is a tribute to your city as well. In closing, the residents of Loma Linda, they do play a vital role in assisting us with our investigations. And we are committed to the community outreach and collaboration and to interact with community members and the leaders such as yourself to strive and make positive impacts in the community. Our public safety needs productive partnerships to succeed, as we all need to work together and make sure our community is a safe place to live, work, and play. Any questions?
Yeah, one question. I just want to be sure I understand the 2019 data that you presented. If I'm understanding you correctly, that the reason for some of the sudden change in the data, again, for 2019, is a difference in the definition of Part 1 and Part 2?
That's correct, sir. So what we saw, and we were required to report to the Department of Justice, were criminal threats that were moved from Part 2 to Part 1.
And just because I'm a curious guy, why did they change the definition? Because it kind of skews the data, so I assume they had a good reason.
They considered those as aggravated assaults, and so aggravated assault is considered a Part 1 crime.
Okay. You answered my question, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
I'd like to personally thank the department for its contribution to getting that burglary ring. I think they made a mistake burglarizing the mayor of Loma Linda. I think that resulted in a heavy push to find these guys. They also were stupid enough to burglarize my home and other people's homes with their GPS ankle bracelets on, and that is probably about as dumb as you can get, but anyway, thank you.
Thank you for your support. All right, thank you. Have a great evening.
Again, I want to end this with, we do have a good team of staff in our city, and I want to thank you, all of them, for working with me for this past, or current fiscal year. I must finish up this current fiscal year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to the whole staff, and then congratulations to everyone that we've hired, promoted, and even those that are leaving us for other opportunities.
Okay, we will close the city council meeting and open up the housing authority, which was already opened in joint session. So the only thing on the agenda is the consent calendar. I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
So-
The motion is to approve the consent calendar for the Housing Authority. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, any reports of council members?
Public comment?
Oh, open the public comment to any of the multitudes of people out in the audience, or anybody still online with us, if it's not past their bedtime. I don't see IT yelling at me, so no public comment. Reports of council members, officers, seeing nobody jump. We will close the housing authority and open up the successor agency. I have to do the, Dr. Rigsby, do I have to do the ceremonial thing? And we have already done the roll call. Any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Any oral reports, public participation for this agenda? Again, I don't see anybody running forward. No conflicts of interest. How about the consent calendar?
Move it.
I have a first. I have a second. Again, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, we have to go through the process.
That's okay. The motion is to approve the consent calendar for the successor agency. Councilman Jindal?
Aye.
Councilman Leonard? Councilman Rigsby?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tempore Daley?
Aye.
Mayor Duper?
Yes.
It passes unanimously. Thank you.
And if there are no reports of officers on this agenda, I think we are adjourned. Thank you to the public for sticking with us.